years.
Thank you.
This compliment right now is not gratuitous. I've lived in Boulder, I've lived in Gun Barrel, lived in Lewis, lived in Longmont, unincorporated Boulder County, and my wife and I, our joke is that it only happens in Louisville, meaning that every time we call somebody in the city for something, we get a call back. So I want to compliment you first of all for that, and I hope that continues as we talk about bocce a little bit. I'm a player. I play every week, most weeks. And my son, who's special needs, adult son, he plays when he can. And it's just become part of our life. And while we are happy to do what we can to keep the courts playable, that's all we're doing. We're keeping them playable. We're not really making improvements. In fact, there are some areas that are just flat out dangerous. I fell this week at the tournament, 2 weeks ago at the tournament in Louisville on a little tricky hilly area that doesn't have good traction. And my friend has done the same a few months ago too. And these were hard falls. These were not just a slip and trip. No injuries, but it just, I think, symbolizes that there's work to be done to make these courts playable, to keep them safe, and to make them something that Louisville can be proud of. I'm married to an Italian, and I've learned long ago that you always listen to Italians. So there's a lot of Italians who play, and I think it would be great to help everybody support the heritage that I know is in this town for Italian Americans. I think that's it. It's become a part of our life, and we're very, very happy to be in a town that has bocce. It's, I don't think, a common thing. I think it's unique. I think it's something that is special. When we play, people gather. We have little kids. There's something about bocce that makes little kids, they get hypnotized. They stand and watch us play. The parents watch. People walking by Memory Square, which is where we play most of our games, stop and watch. And it is truly a community experience. A lot of interaction, a lot of fun, and a very uplifting, I think, place to be on Sundays. So with that, thank you, Council. We appreciate it. 4 seconds left.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it.
Next, I have John Wagner, followed by Jan de Bruin-Kops.
Hello, I'm John Wagner, and I'm a resident here in Louisville for the past 24 years. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. I like this enhancement. Can I take it? Actually, I too am here to talk about bocce, oddly enough. I've played in courts in Monterey and in Oregon and in Los Angeles and also in Denver. And all of them have been in better shapes than the ones here at Memory Square. I know there are 3 courts at the community park which do not provide any shade. And you need it in this climate, at least during the summer. And it's nice to play in the cool of the evening, which I did in Roseburg just 2 nights ago. Just a small string of lights, and their courts were bigger than ours, and they had some turf on them, which plays pretty well too, if it's maintained properly. And I know that there's a few guys that play bocce that would be willing to do some work to use the materials that you provide. And it doesn't have to be a lot. 5 to 20,000 could do a lot. And I know you spend that much on stuff that doesn't even get used. Because I see it. You know, you go to many of the parks are not used. So what else? And also, I agree with the historical importance of a sport that is it's not exhausting, but it's fun. It requires a lot of skill, and the youth may pick up on it and have some activities other than what they currently do. Let's see. Yeah, that's about it for me, and somebody else has got my 45 seconds.
Thanks, John.
Next up, I have Yonda Broom Cops, followed by Haley Fitzpatrick.
Jan Willem de Bruin Kops. In Dutch, we would say Jan Willem de Bruin Kops, but it doesn't really matter. Ward 2, proud Louisville resident since 2011. Judy, Caleb, Deb, Chris, Josh, Dietrich, and Barbara, if you're out there, I don't have 3 things tonight, but I'm just going to be talking about bocce tonight. I guess my first question to you all, and George told me that you can't answer the question, so when you think about Louisville, the history of Louisville, probably one of the first things that comes to mind, or hopefully the first thing that comes to mind, is kind of Italian heritage. We have been lucky enough, George and I played in the last couple of years in the Labor Day tournament. George, we got on the podium last year, 3rd place. There's a couple ringers they bring in from Denver that we got to talk to Angelo and Lenny about it, maybe keep them in Denver. But anyway, needless to say, it's an enjoyable sport. La Festa, I wasn't able to make it for that, but that had a great turnout as well. I believe the tournament, as they mentioned, sold out in a matter of minutes. If we had just a little bit more space, but kind of to get to me and bocce, these gentlemen have done an exceptional job of explaining things that we potentially need that could make it better. Lenny showed me courts from, is it Ohio? Courts in Ohio, covered, perfect surfaces, fenced in, basically bocce all year round. Sadly, well, I don't know if it's sadly. I mean, Lenny does a great job maintaining the courts, but the other day I drove up and he's like bent down, scraping courts, getting the surface ready. Because if not, what ends up happening is you throw the ball straight down the court, and it goes, maybe almost 90 degrees left or right. The court dries out. So to say that without Lenny and I think Angelo and maybe a few other gentlemen put their hard-earned time, they're basically unplayable. So think about playing tennis, or everyone's talking about pickleball is a hot topic now. Think about like the ball just. It was supposed to bounce right, and it's going to bounce left, right? I don't think anybody would actually show up and play on those courts. So, essentially, not much to add because these gentlemen have done such a great job. I would like to invite you all, to come out and play some bocce. It is a lot of fun. It just requires, 4 balls per team. The Polino, if you're thirsty, a non-alcoholic or an alcoholic beverage, it pairs very well with the game. But usually Sunday mornings, I know you can find Lenny and his friends, and we kind of just try to sprinkle in. We try to respect, the original, the OGs. But other than that, I don't really have much to say. Just that I would definitely consider spending a little bit of money on bocce, and hopefully we can make some courts that are playable all year round, and maybe even at nighttime. Thank you so much. Sorry for the unorthodox speech.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Next up, Haley Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. My name's Hallie Fitzpatrick. I'm a Louisville resident. I've lived here for 7 years now. When I first moved here, I rented a house just off Buchanan Court. Right behind that court is a Montessori school, and there are 4 bocce-shaped sand pits there that I was looking forward to playing bocce, and they're really unplayable. You could probably play different games there, but not really bocce. And I wasn't, and since then, despite that, I fell in love with Louisville, and we bought a house. And I later learned that there's other courts that are in much better shape, like the ones in Memory Square. And a big reason I think they're in better shape is from people like Lenny and others that are actually doing some maintenance. I wouldn't be surprised if Louisville did maybe a little bit better maintenance on that too, but I don't know. But the Montessori example is a good example of how neglect of the courts basically makes them unusable, and it's a waste of resources. I don't think I've ever seen people playing bocce there. Never seen someone play 2 games there, that's for sure. So I've been enjoying playing. I really appreciate the support of some folks that are maintaining it, and here to just echo the voices that have already came before me and say I would implore you to give these courts the respect that they deserve. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that, and as always, as it was mentioned, we can't respond because, of course, the items are not on the agenda, but rest assured that we are taking your emails to heart and what you said tonight. All right, next is the city manager's report, which is the acting city manager. Take it away, Sam Fox. Jeez. Sorry about that. Just jumping ahead, trying to move us through, right? All right, can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, council member informational comments and committee reports. And let's see, I want to start this one because I just came a few minutes ago from the opening, as did Councilmember Fahey and Council Member Kern, from a terrific opening. And I'm just trying to find my, we saw the opening in the old GHX building, which, as you probably know, is at the very, very top point, or the highest point in Louisville. Looks down over the city, looks out on Davidson Mesa, looks out on the Flatirons, and the America's Quantum Peak is there now, which is going to be a center for providing services and all kinds of connections and research, and inclined to shoot lasers at atoms. I'm not a science guy, but that's what they said over and over, and I believe them. It's a technology that is going to be very revolutionary in a lot of different areas, including human rights, including healthcare and defense, and all sorts of things. And you'll hear a lot from them. It's really amazing and really thrilling. And I had to heed my mother's old comment, which is, Chris, don't touch, when I was out there, because we were dealing with lasers and so forth. But anyway, I really want to welcome them to Louisville and appreciate their contributions in advance. And you'll be seeing probably plenty of stuff on the news and in the papers about it, because about everybody anybody was there. I was privileged to be able to be there. All right, others? Yes, Councilmember Fahey.
I will also echo that this is going to be a wonderful addition to the city of Louisville. And I want to mention, I was at the Consortium of Cities meeting this past week, and their topic of conversation was the drought. And they've come up with some interesting information. We had first a presentation from Russ from Colorado Climate Center that explained what the situation was and how dire it really is for the whole state, being part of that state. And also then there was a presentation by Adam Quicklin from Grand County. They have come up with a county-wide drought preparedness program, and it's incorporating every community and every portion of the county. So everyone in Grand County is working together, and they emphasized how important that was for everyone in the community to work together to come up with a solution. And a lot of it was information and education of the public. This is how you can help to eliminate the effects of the drought. So I would like us to become more participatory in drought mitigation. Thank you.
Other council comments? Okay, one other thing I just mentioned, I'm part of the Northwest Mayors and County Commissioners Coalition, which is a group of mayors, as you might imagine, along the 36 corridor from Westminster on up to Boulder and on up to Erie and Longmont. We are in the process of kind of reworking our kind of rules of engagement for the efforts that the group has in the state legislature, trying to provide some needed input as a community. It's been a very, very successful group at providing that lobbying support on different forms of state and then federal legislation on transportation, both ground transportation and now air transportation, at least with respect to RMMA. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's something that I'm going to be leading a workshop on how we are evolving. I think that's the best way to put it. So anything else? All right, let's move on. Do we have a acting city manager's report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. So just want to highlight our new website has launched. It launched just this week. We thank you for your feedback. This is going to continue to evolve and improve. So please do keep pressing that website feedbacks button and sending us feedback. I also want to highlight how huge of an achievement this is and what a testament of the work to all of our staff to be able to launch this new and much improved website. I particularly want to shout out Grace Johnson, who's our communications manager, who led this team, and the core team, including Derek Cosson, Ginger Cross, and Aaron Owen, who really took a heavy lift in all of these website updates. So if you see them, please thank them, and thank you all for our new website. Our Marshall Fire refunds are going. We have about 180, maybe 200 received after mail today. We'll see. We're still working through all of those to diligently vet them and get that processing continuing. No one has opted out to date. I want to highlight that Boulder Valley School District has announced their enrollment impacts presentation to the BVSD board coming up on Tuesday, 8/25 at 3 p.m. You may want to watch their board meeting and stay tuned for the announcement of those impacts. And then the last thing I'll highlight is that tomorrow night at 6 p.m. we have the mayor's community meeting in the library in the first floor meeting room. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is our regular business, and we've got a number of items tonight. First is Resolution Number 77, Series 2026, a resolution designating the residence located at 1013 Lafarge Avenue as a historic landmark to be named the Giorzelli House. I think I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, please correct me. And approving a historic preservation fund grant. And do we have a staff presentation?
There we go. Okay. Thanks for your patience with those technical difficulties. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jess Daniel, Senior Planner. This item is Resolution number 77, designating 1013 Lafarge Avenue a historic landmark and approval of a Historic Preservation Fund grant. So the applicant is requesting landmark designation and a grant of up to $128,300, which includes extraordinary circumstances grant funding. Staff are recommending approval of this request with the home to be named the Drizelli House, a landmark incentive bonus of $7,700, and a grant of up to $128,300 corresponding to the Tier 1 and Tier 2 grant categories as outlined in the current Historic Preservation Fund resolution. And these categories will be discussed in the following slides. So 1013 Lafarge is located at the intersection of Lafarge Avenue and South Street. This home has remained in very good condition over time, as demonstrated by the photo from 1948 on the left and a recent image on the right. The city's architectural survey, Stories and Places, identifies this home as a distinctive type in the Barclay Place subdivision. It's a pyramidal hipped roof cottage with a small gabled front projection on the side. There are 4 of these types of homes located on the same block on Lafarge, listed on the slide here. A historic structure assessment was recently completed, which found that the building does have the potential to be restored to a high degree of historic integrity. However, there is extensive foundation work required to repair and replace the foundations related to this grant request. So in looking at the landmark criteria, in order to receive a landmark, landmarks must be at least 50 years old and meet one or more criteria for architectural, social, geographical, and environmental significance as outlined in the Louisville Municipal Code. So 1013 Lafarge Avenue meets these criteria. It meets the age criteria as it was constructed in 1906 and is around 120 years old. It meets the social significance criteria. It has association with Italian immigrant history, in particular the ownership of 2 prominent Louisville families over most of the lifetime of the home, and these are the DiFrancia and Drizelli family. This home was also one of several houses built on the block, as mentioned previously, by E.J. DiFrancia as dowries for his daughters, so he built 4 homes for dowries. It also has high architectural integrity due to its distinctive pyramidal and hipped roof cottage and small gabled front style. And lastly, it meets the physical criteria as it's noted for its high integrity in the city's architectural surveys and has some original siding and has also maintained its historic footprint. So the high-level scope of work associated with the grant request includes improving the site grading and drainage, temporarily moving the home to move it over the new foundation that will be part of the grant request, foundation framing associated with that work, replacing the siding to match the historic siding, repairing and replacing the covered porch elements, including the roof, columns, and floor, new roofing and waterproofing, including gutters, new electrical paneling, so a new 200 amp panel and wiring, new historically accurate windows and doors, replacing the soffits and fascia, demolition and removal of the materials associated with all of this work, and then finally a new single-story addition located at the rear of the home. So this table shows the maximum grant amounts under the current Historic Preservation Fund resolution. That's resolution number 102, series 2025. So the applicant is requesting the maximum allowable grant under both the Tier 1 and Tier 2 categories, and I'll go through each of these in detail. So the first subcategory under Tier 1 is a $63,000 matching base grant for eligible preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation expenses. The applicant's expenses under this category are listed in the table and detailed in the staff report, which include the site grading, drainage, electrical improvements, and other exterior alterations to complement and match the historic aspects of the home. All of these items are eligible for a total cost of $235,882, and half of those eligible expenses are $117,940. So these expenses do exceed the maximum matching grant amount of $63,000 as permitted by this tier. The applicant is intending to construct a new one-story rear addition, which would be a total cost of $855,000. The city has a subgrant for new construction that respects the massing, size, and scale of the historic property, and the applicant is requesting the maximum new construction grant amount, which is $23,000, and some elevations are included in the slide showing that rear addition. The last subcategory of Tier 1 is a structural grant for residential properties that require extensive stabilization work that exceeds the base residential grant amount. So the new foundation and house move as part of this project are qualifying expenses under this category, and those expenses total $141,167. Half of those expenses are around $70,000. However, the maximum structural grant available is $20,000. As additional funding is needed for structural work, this triggers consideration under the Tier 2 grant category for extraordinary circumstances. And extraordinary circumstances is defined as vital structural work and building code compliance work that exceed Tier 1 grant amounts if identified in an approved historic structure assessment. The maximum cap on extraordinary circumstances is $22,300. And in this case, the approved HSA did identify extensive foundation repair and replacement. So in considering the grant request, staff found that there are enough eligible expenses that meet and exceed the maximum Tier 1 grant amounts. This includes the base grant amount for preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation expenses. This also included the new construction grant for the proposed one-story addition, as well as the structural grant for the additional structural work for the house move and the new foundation. The applicant had remaining expenses not covered by Tier 1 amounts associated with the new foundation, which triggered extraordinary circumstances grant funding, and staff found that the applicant was eligible for this funding as it is in the approved HSA. At their July 20th meeting, the Historic Preservation Commission approved an alteration certificate for this work and recommended that City Council approve the request, including a $7,700 landmark bonus and a total grant of $128,300, and that the structure be named the Girzelli House. As the request meets the landmark designation criteria and the historic preservation funding resolution, staff recommend approval of Resolution 77, approving the landmark designation, the landmark incentive bonus of $7,700, naming the structure the Girzelli House, and approval of the grant of up to $128,300 as per the following grant categories. So $63,000 for the residential grant, $20,000 for the structural subgrant, $23,000 for the new construction grant, and $22,300 for the extraordinary circumstances grant. So that concludes the staff presentation. If there are any questions. There is not an applicant presentation tonight, but they did want to express their gratitude that council's considering the request. They weren't able to attend due to some extenuating circumstances.
Thank you. Council, any questions about this proposal? Okay. Do we have a motion? Oh, we need some public comment. Do we have any public comment on
There's
that?
no
Okay.
public comment.
All right. Any council discussion, further discussion? Motion? Anybody want to make a motion?
I move to approve Resolution Number 77, Series 2026, a resolution designating the residence located at 1013 Lafarge Avenue a historic landmark to be named for the Girzelli House and approving a historic preservation fund grant.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Next is ordinance number 1936, Series 2026, an ordinance amending Title 17 of the Louisville Municipal Code regarding inclusionary housing. This is on for second reading. So the public hearing was announced on the City of Louisville's website on July 31st, 2026. I'm going to open the public hearing, ask for any disclosures people have. Seeing none. Before we do the staff presentation, looks like they're getting some things together. This initial discussion, not the initial first reading, but the initial discussion happened a year ago, I think, and we provided some direction and discussion. We received several weeks ago a draft that we had first reading on, and tonight we're here to hear both the presentation and have a public hearing on this. There'll be 2 rounds of public comment tonight, and this is, I just want to kind of frame this as this is not a discussion of the wider issues of housing in Louisville. It is a subset of that. We've got a rewrite of our development code that's coming, and this is in a category of items that we really are trying to do independent or parallel to that effort, in an effort, I think, to fix and improve what we have. So with that in mind, I'll leave it to Jeff Hurt to take us through the presentation.
Thank you. And yes, so this is the intent of this ordinance is for targeted updates to the inclusionary housing ordinance with kind of the overarching purpose of making it better in the near term ahead of a broader development code update. I'm going to share some more information about that broader development code update and kind of how this fits into that. The sort of in terms of what making it better means, it's really about increasing the likelihood of affordable housing units actually being built as kind of the overarching purpose of this code amendment. So the topics I'm going to walk through, and I'll try to get through this and be concise, but there's a lot of content to cover. First, some context in terms of policy foundation, what our current regulations say. Then a summary of the proposal that's on the table tonight in terms of the ordinance in your packet. And then to summarize some potential amendments for council consideration based on the questions that were raised during first reading. So I think most of us are well aware of our affordability problem. It's well documented in our housing plan, so I won't get into the numbers. Happy to circle back to this if you would like. But it is certainly called out in the housing plan and the comprehensive plan to address our inclusionary housing ordinance as an action item. So we did adopt the housing plan in 2024 and the comp plan in 2026. Both of those documents really explicitly call for updating this ordinance to address this issue among a broader set of housing issues. And there's some other policy contexts that are certainly driving this discussion. We did want to share a little bit more information about the development code update, sort of how this fits in that trajectory. So this graphic here is an attempt to kind of show how we started with our policy foundation and we're evolving into a broader development code update. So 2024, we adopted the housing plan. The comprehensive plan is intended to sort of build off of that in terms of identifying areas where residential may be appropriate to address some of our affordability issues. And I did want to highlight that we are beginning the development code update very soon here. And one specific thing that is important to note, within that development code update overall budget, which is about $1 million, we, as a reminder, and we brought this to council earlier this year, we have about a $200,000 grant from the State Department of Local Affairs to specifically address housing affordability within the code update. So it is fairly well resourced to not only take a deep dive into the inclusionary ordinance, but just more broadly look at all the sort of housing levers within our code that can be addressed. And so we do have, we're confident we're going to have housing policy experts on our consultant team this is kind of their wheelhouse, and they will be dissecting this ordinance and the rest of the code for that purpose. A little bit more context, we will be coming to council very soon with consideration of a contract and a scope of work. We are actively working on that right now. And as part of the scoping we've been working on, did want to kind of reiterate to council that there'll be a lot of opportunities for council input and planning commission input and community input sort of early and often and throughout. So for example, at the beginning of the project, there'll be check-ins with council with regards to sort of the overall work plan, the scope, the framework, the governance structure of the project. So there'll be more to come on that front, but we did want to make it clear that this is intended to be targeted for tonight, but there is a broader effort underway, and happy to talk more about what that scope might look like, but you'll be seeing that very soon. So getting into our current inclusionary framework as a reminder, so essentially our code today says for all new residential development, the developer has to set aside 12% of those units as permanently affordable. And of those 12% of the units, half need to be affordable to households earning less than 80% of area median income, the other half less than 60% of area median income. And there are all alternative compliance options. I'm oversimplifying our current ordinance here, but that's the overall sort of framework. We did have some new data for council to reflect the first reading questions. We pulled some data showing what our percent of overall units is that is deed restricted. So we're kind of in the middle of the pack among our peer cities in Boulder County. About 4% of our housing stock is permanently affordable deed restricted, which is slightly less from some other cities, slightly more. As a reminder, our overall goal is working toward 12% deed restricted affordable by 2035. In terms of why we're updating the ordinance now, we have not seen a single deed-restricted affordable housing unit in the 5-year history of this ordinance. That's one reason. The ordinance is not necessarily completely at fault. There's a lot of other factors in terms of land use policy and whatnot, but certainly points to a need to update this ordinance. With the comprehensive plan calling for additional residential development in certain areas or supporting it, I feel like now is an opportune time to sort of get ahead of that. And address the ordinance more in the near term ahead of the broader code update. So I'm going to walk through the proposal that is in the ordinance before you tonight, and then we'll get into the potential amendments to supplement or replace some of this for discussion. So the first major component of the ordinance update relates to the area median income threshold. So current ordinance, again, is 60% AMI, 80% AMI. The proposed ordinance before you tonight would increase that range, all with the goal of increasing the feasibility of these projects from a developer standpoint, and address sort of the gap between what a market rate unit would sell or rent for and what a deed restricted unit would sell or rent for. So area median income is one of the most powerful levers there. So the proposal is to divvy up the AMIs by tenure, so unit type, as opposed to just a broad half and half. And the proposal is for 12% of rental units to be affordable to 80% or less AMI households for rental units. And for ownership units, 12% of those units would be up to 120% area median income. That reflects more closely current market conditions, what household incomes can afford at certain price points. There's some additional information in your packet that's kind of more updated and more robust in terms of what price points go with different area median income ranges, even different salaries in Boulder County and how they relate to AMIs. That is informing this. Another sort of lever in the proposed ordinance relates to density. So there is a proposed residential density bonus where you could get an increase of 20% of the allowed residential units for providing on-site affordable housing in compliance with the IHO. And also an increase in 20% of the lot coverage. These are all things that can be combined or taken one sort of individually. The ordinance does have an enhanced density bonus for projects that have 100% on-site affordable for rental that have a sort of a deeper affordability threshold. And happy to talk more about that. I know we're going to be discussing that. Related to the density bonus, this is all about, again, improving project feasibility. It is an explicit sort of component of the IHO called out in the housing plan and the comp plan as one of the most effective tools to promote our goals here. It is important also to note that this doesn't supersede us as a city evaluating projects holistically based on a range of other factors. So if the density bonus is allowed, the city also looks at other impacts in terms of traffic, infrastructure, all of that. So it doesn't, the density bonus isn't a given. It doesn't override those other things that need to be looked at as well. And so this is sort of a simple kind of rudimentary example of how a density bonus would apply for a project that is currently entitled to, say, 100 units. So the current ordinance would essentially say that if you have a 100-unit project, 12 of those units need to be deed restricted affordable, and then it would be about 88 of those units would be market rate. Under the density bonus, that would bump up the unit count to 120 units, if you got the 20%, which would increase the number of affordable units that the city would get by about 3. But also importantly, it would increase the number of market rate units that the developer could get to further address that feasibility issue. So about 17 more market rate units in this hypothetical scenario would be allowed if the density bonus was granted. And this is a may, currently may be granted at city council's discretion. And so this would assume that bonus was granted by council. Other incentives built into the ordinance relate to parking reduction. So there's an elimination of parking requirements for affordable projects. It goes beyond our current requirements to eliminate those. I'm happy to talk more about that. There's a waiver to development review fees, which helps. And the analysis is, again, about increasing the feasibility of these projects. The fee in lieu, the proposal is to not reopen the actual methodology for the fee in lieu, but essentially update the inputs into the fee in lieu. So the market data in terms of price points and incomes was updated, and that reflects an increase of barely anything for the rental units, actually, and that just sort of reflects the current market conditions. But it is a more than double increase in the fee in lieu for owner-occupied units. And this is what the model that we ran and reran basically spits out for us in terms of the fee in lieu. I didn't mean to gloss over the fact that a couple of important points here. So one, the proposal is for the rental fee in lieu to be calibrated to 60% area median income. And we may get into this, but essentially the model tells us in part that at 80% area median income, market rates for rental units are actually pretty closely aligned in Boulder County currently. This is something that we've learned recently and our peer cities have learned recently in Boulder County. It's new information. So the proposal is to keep the fee in lieu calibrated to 60% AMI and to allow more discretion for the city manager to update the fees without needing to come back to council for an ordinance. So one of the questions that came up regarding the fee in lieu, of course, is with these additional fees, how does that get passed down to these units and the market rate units? Does it make the market rate units less affordable? And the answer is nuanced, but I guess the quick answer is minimally from staff's perspective, does that actually get passed down to the market rate units? It typically gets spread out among other factors like value engineering, reduced cost of finishing, different maintenance structures, things like that, reduced profits. So from staff's kind of analysis and perspective, the pass down to future tenants is partial. Another incentive in the ordinance is for building heights, a building height increase of up to 1 story or 15 feet, whichever is less, if the developer provides the units, the affordable units on site in compliance with the IHO. And there's a lot of other sort of backstops to this in terms of like comprehensive plan and the height guidance and things like that, and other considerations. So it wouldn't certainly be a given. This is, again, a may that council may approve. So there's lots of other factors at play. I've got a couple slides here illustrating where those height increases would be eligible potentially. Again, this is about increasing development feasibility. So a couple maps here showing where the height increase could apply. So starting first with downtown. So this is a map of downtown. The dotted line shows all of downtown Louisville, and the area in crosshatched red are called the transition areas of downtown. Those are essentially the edge areas of downtown. The ordinance would allow at council's discretion an increase of 1 story or 15 feet in those transition areas on the periphery of downtown, but not in the core areas and not in the rest of downtown. No height increase eligible there. And then this is actually a citywide map, which I know is hard to read. We could come back to it if you'd like, but it's essentially showing all of the areas of the city where multifamily housing is permitted as a use by right. There's a lot of granularity here. There's individual sites that may not have the lot area or whatever, but in general, this shows sort of the pockets of the community where multifamily would be allowed and therefore more likely to be eligible for that height increase. So happy to come back to this. Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of the ordinance with no conditions back in May, with a couple suggestions for some updates that we have generally incorporated. And so bear with me here. So these are the potential amendments that are based on the first reading questions from council. So I'm going to go through each one of them, one slide for each one of them. We have a total of 7 actually that we're putting on the table for council discussion tonight. So the first one regarding the what's known as the like-for-like provision in the ordinance, that's essentially where the ordinance says that any of the deed-restricted affordable units have to have the same design and materials and the same quality as the market rate units. That's been a subject of discussion related to sort of overall project cost and feasibility. Are we talking about the same countertops, the same appliances, things like that? And so if you read it really rigidly, I think some folks see that as a problem. And so from staff's perspective, we're definitely open and flexible to modifying that language, but some potential amendments to address that specific concern are adjusting the language to be more about exterior compatibility, durability, things of that nature, and explicitly excluding things like finishes and materials and things like that. Those are not things that we as staff are actually reviewing with a project. We're not looking at countertops. We're obviously not looking at appliances like at the PUD level, but it could be an issue certainly, and we want to address that. Another component of a potential amendment could be in the like-for-like in terms of the unit mix. So if they're all 2-bedroom units, should the deed-restricted units be also 2-bedroom units? Things of that nature. We could also look at language for that. We think there's definitely some options there. The second potential amendment regarding the enhanced density bonus. So that was a question question during first reading. The current proposal basically allows an enhanced density bonus of up to 30% if you do 100% on-site affordable at a sort of a deeper affordability level. The potential amendments that we're kind of putting on the table for discussion are to kind of loosen that up a bit in the sense of potentially doing an enhanced bonus for projects that just simply exceed the IHO. So instead of it being 100% on-site affordable, maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 30%. Also potentially having that enhanced density bonus for deeper affordability projects. There was some question from council at first reading about the current proposal has an 80%, basically would say all the units have to be under 80% AMI for it to be eligible for the bonus. One option would be just to make it an average of 60% AMI. So some of the units could be up to 100, 120. That's certainly an option on the table, and to allow it for both ownership and rental. So we see an opportunity for amendments to broaden the enhanced density bonus with a couple components here. The third potential amendment is to more explicitly call out that affordable housing projects could be eligible for expedited PUD review. A lot of these projects, these hypothetical projects, may already be eligible for that, but to more explicitly call it out could be a helpful lever within this broader code amendment. And happy to talk about Prop 120 and 23 and fast track requirements as well on that. Fourth potential amendment is to essentially say that the fee in lieu at the time of approval of the entitlement of the PUD is locked in at that moment as opposed to at the time of permit. The current ordinance and what we've had in place for the whole time is that it's the fee in lieu at the time of permit. So there is one project that this is problematic for, the East Street Village. So that's an option that can be, I think, fairly easily put in the ordinance to lock that in at the time of PUD. PUDs expire after 3 years, so there is a duration on that could be locked in. Fifth potential amendment is to look at the area median income. So in recognition that our analysis shows that 80% area median income household and market rate rental units are pretty closely aligned now, and our analysis is showing that, and other communities are finding that in Boulder County as well. And so it's a question for council consideration if we want to look at lowering the AMI to 60% for rental units. Not something we're necessarily recommending. It certainly would affect the feasibility of some of these projects, but just because the numbers show that they're so closely aligned, we did want to put that on the table for consideration. 6 of 7 potential amendments is essentially for the incentives, clarifying that they're more of a shall and a given than a may at council's discretion. So the way the ordinance is structured now, it's really up to council to decide if the density bonus should be allowed, if the height bonus should be allowed. That creates uncertainty and unpredictability for the development community, understandably. So there are ways in the ordinance that we can make it more of a shall, and so we're open to that as well. Seventh and final potential amendment, and this is a new one, not in the staff packet, that just kind of came to light in the last few days. We did look closely at the ordinance and realized that the way the ordinance is written currently, any project that requires a PUD, so that's any project over 6 units is the threshold, requires compliance with the inclusionary housing ordinance. That isn't so much of the issue as the additional language that says or has a final plat. So you could narrowly look at that and say that a project that has less than 6 units but requires a final plat has to comply. That's potentially problematic and something that we could easily address through a code amendment, but wanted to put it on the table for council discussion to not overly burden the smaller projects inadvertently. So the options for council are essentially adopt the ordinance as is, adopt the ordinance with amendments, or certainly could defer the ordinance for consideration as part of the broader development code update. And staff is recommending approval of the ordinance to advance our policy objectives. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, council questions? Yes, Councilmember Hefner and then Councilmember.
Just on the last piece, on the final plat, I mean, is there another way to construe it other than strictly?
Well, I think it's not something that's surfaced as an issue. Like, I don't know that this has been an issue because most developments have required a PUD. We don't have a lot of 3 and 4 unit projects, but
I'm just saying, is there a world in which we can keep the language we have and a 5-unit development is not subject to this ordinance?
A 5-unit development that requires a final plat, it's a fair point that strictly applied, yes, they would need to comply with the IHO.
Okay. And I assume we strictly apply, or, I mean, that's not like a choice, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of code language with a lot of ambiguity. This is pretty clear, but we just haven't had a specific example of this being a problem other than just looking at the language and realizing it could be a problem.
Okay, thanks.
First question, you had a table up there with that example of 100-unit development. It looked like you rounded up for the number of affordable units. Is that written into the code?
Yeah, this is very high level, rudimentary, and I believe we did round up with this just to make it more even numbers. So I forget if it was 0.4 or 0.5 is what the number comes out to, but we did round it up, yeah, just for illustrative purposes.
Okay. I'm just curious, like, it doesn't say in our code whether you should round up or round down. I don't know. It's not a big deal, it's just, anyway.
No, that's fair, yeah.
Fine. Okay. Okay, another question. Could you say a little bit more about why, at the moment, we're excluding the downtown and the old town areas for the height incentive?
Yeah, I think that trying to get my head into the downtown standards, but I think it's more about seeing the peripheral areas and transition areas, just seeing them. I think the downtown design handbook is it?
Yeah, and I think so when you look at the downtown design requirements, the core area, you can do up to 3 stories. The transition area, you can only do up to 2 stories. Mm-hmm. So by including the transition area, we would allow potentially up to 3 stories in the transition area, but not allow 4 stories in the core area because of the historic character.
Okay, no, that's helpful. And then either in reference to the map or just otherwise, if someone came in to do a project in one of those areas where, I don't know, say the height incentive was allowed, I guess I'm wondering, is it well defined in all those places currently what the allowable density is, what the allowable lot coverage is, what the allowable height is? so that it's clear what the incentive would provide? Or is there some murkiness around those things?
No, I think it's pretty clearly defined, probably not universally, but I mean, most of these properties have a base underlying zone district that has a specific density metric. And then for those that don't, that are maybe in like a general development plan, I'd say the majority of those have a specific density maximum metric, so you would have a good baseline. So I think the answer to the question is, the majority of cases is clearly defined, yeah.
Okay, that's helpful too. Okay, and I don't know, maybe one more question. So you don't try to put any numbers to dollars essentially to sort of what the different incentives might provide a developer per unit or per square foot or something like that. Would you say it's just very difficult to try to put some kind of numbers to how much we're giving people by these incentives?
Yeah, I think the best response to that is, so as part of the housing plan, there was a whole development feasibility analysis that was done by the consultant, basically to figure out what the most powerful levers were from a sort of pro forma feasibility. And so that baseline analysis, which we could dig up somewhere, heavily informed, basically said those are the ones that provide the most sort of financial benefit among other benefits.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a case study done, but there's so many variables that we could show it in a case study, but we didn't do that with this.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Other council questions? Yes, Councilmember Kern and then Councilmember Dickinson.
Great, thank you. Thanks for all the work, Jeff, really. And Rob, I know it was a lot to put in and try and get us all these different suggestions to help us with some of our housing issues. So just curious, on the units, so let's say it is a development that does include the 12% affordable units. If they are ownership, so they're deed restricted, who is managing and determining? And if it's a rental, because I know when it's a mixed rental property, it's usually the rental company or agency that's handling it. They do that. And in the rental case, how much flexibility actually is there with income? So if somebody qualified at 60%, we don't want to disincentivize them from taking promotions or increases. So does that still allow them to stay in their unit that they once qualified for? Is there flexibility? And in the ownership, once somebody qualifies and owns it, who determines, and I mean, can they just continue to own it? And then when they go to sell, it just has to sell to somebody who has 80%, and I wasn't sure who manages that for us.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think it depends on the type of project, as I understand it. So if you have a project that's funded by like low-income housing tax credits, like 100% affordable, that's through the Colorado Housing Finance Agency. Like they're the ones that are overseeing that and checking on the income verification and locking in the deed restriction and all that. For projects that are doing 12% on site, that is more in the city's wheelhouse in terms of that administration. We do have an intergovernmental agreement that we need to re-up, but it recently expired with the city of Boulder, where they actually have agreed to provide that administrative support for us. Basically, they're well equipped and they have a whole shop of people who do this type of work in terms of income verification. And as part of that IGA, there's supplemental guidelines and protocols and policies that lay all of this out in terms of income qualifications, appreciation, if your income goes up, what happens? I'm not as well versed in all those specifics, but I know that we have a partnership with them, an active partnership where they are supporting us in those situations, which we haven't come across yet. We don't have any in the hopper right now, but we do have that support available.
I was just going to add so generally how it works is you can qualify out of rental. So if your income does increase, there is some cadence that you have to requalify. And I don't know what that is, so that is possible. Ownership's different. If you qualify for ownership, they don't force you to sell the house if your income increases. So those are treated differently. So you can keep that. There is a limit on how much value it can increase each year, and then when it sells, it does have to qualify again.
Right, right, because there's usually like 2% a year or whatever it is like a standard set, I think, thing for deed
Right,
restricted.
and our
commercial.
past IGA with Boulder is, we would comply with their standards for those types of things. So that was part of them agreeing to manage this for the city. So we would align, I don't know that we have all the number details, but we can get that for council if they want in the future.
No, so there is an option then, since we do need to renew, to perhaps the city can set that standard for what's best for Louisville versus following exactly.
Well,
the city
that was
of
part of our agreement with Boulder, was that we would follow their standards, because I don't think they were doing this IGA with multiple cities, and I don't think they wanted to try to administer 4 or 5 different standards. So I don't know if they'd be agreeable to that, but we can ask them when we talk about the IGA renewal.
That'd be great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then you had mentioned that 4.1% of the properties in Louisville currently are specifically qualified as deed restricted or income qualified, lower than 80% AMI. That's not taking into account the numerous properties that we have that are like naturally occurring affordability. And so if you did that, do we have any idea what might be our affordability percentages?
I'm not sure, but to your question, yes, it's only the ones that are deed restricted. We don't have a naturally occurring affordable. Presumably, obviously, that would bump the percentage up, but the 12% goal is, I believe, for permanently affordable as well, if I recall.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work, and I like a lot of these amendments. I'll be happy to comment on them later. A couple questions. When it comes to like expedited PUD review, is there like concrete, like what, I just read it as like, it'll be faster, but what are the concrete examples of expedited? And are there different levels of expediting that can actually be accomplished?
Yeah, it's a good question. So our sort of baseline, every project over 6 units has to go through a PUD, right? And so our baseline PUD process is essentially 4 public hearings. So preliminary is 1 step, 2 public hearings, final, 2 public hearings. Expedited allows it to go straight to final, so you just have 2 public hearings is the simple way to.
Okay,
yeah.
that's really helpful. Thanks for that. And then there's a portion here about, I'm trying to find it, but around like waiving of some fees. It's not, I didn't really see in your presentation tonight, but there's a conversation about like waiving some fees, which I think is certainly interesting. But I was wondering if this is the time and place to potentially not so much waive, but change the way in which we do maybe potentially water tap fees for these kind of projects where they're paid over time. So it's fine. Like if it's a $120,000 water tap fee, $12,000 a year for 10 years as opposed to $120K upfront. I'm wondering if you have more concrete examples of like fee waivers or fee reductions or something like that where the fee can be paid over time.
Yeah, for sure. And to be clear, the ordinance does not address water tap fees or water or wastewater. It's really only about like the fee you pay for like a rezoning application. It adds up to several $1,000s for a typical project, so it's not a huge amount. But in terms of anything related to infrastructure, water, wastewater, that's a bigger discussion we need to have with Public Works and do a lot of analysis. We would certainly, any lever that helps, we would support, but in the interest of keeping it targeted, we didn't bring that to the table yet.
Yeah, I guess that's my question, and I'm fine if that's the answer is, it's like, that's a conversation for another day, and it's too complicated, or certainly it's too complicated for tonight, but is it the kind of thing that we should be wrapping into this, or we should really leave it separate and deal with that in a bigger realm? I think you kind of said it, but a clear.
I'm happy to step in. That's a separate conversation that we can certainly have if council's interested in it, but it's not part of the IHO conversation.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think that's all I have for now, but I will say I appreciate you, Rob has said this as well, but, the like for like, is sort of like we don't even look at that. We don't even evaluate it. The internal finishes, the appliances, things like that, like, it's not even part of the process. So of course we don't hold it to a certain standard. We don't even evaluate what countertops they're putting in. It's not part of the PUD. It's not part of their agreement when they're doing affordable units. Right. And so I think, being explicit, and I think there's no harm in being explicit about what is already seemingly practice, but I think the perception is not that. The perception is they are like for like units in all ways. And so I think your keen understanding of it is not translating to developers and certainly not to residents. So I appreciate you pointing that out tonight, but I think adding that explicit, you know what I mean?
Okay. I have 3 questions, and then we can get to our first round of public comment. Can you put up the map that you showed? I just want to clarify, this is mostly for folks that are watching. This is under our current regulatory framework in the city, right?
Yes.
This could change depending on how we adjust that. Am I right?
Yeah, it certainly could always change, yeah, but this is current, yeah.
The second question has to do with AMI eligibility restructuring. You had a table in the packet, and I can probably find the page. It's page 210 of the packet. Financially attainable housing by household size. And I wanted to just probe that a little bit kind of practically. My understanding, just digging into that a little bit, is that 80% AMI is like $96,400 for a 2-person household. That's 80% AMI. Is that roughly correct?
Sorry, I don't have the table in front of me. It sounds roughly correct.
And I guess, or my understanding is that, you know, firefighters, elementary school teachers, and mechanics are a little bit below that. Is that right? I mean, I just want to get some clarity on kind of who we're talking about when we're changing or not changing.
Yeah, so I have the table up. If you have specific questions, I can call out the numbers for you. And you are correct that 80% 2-person household is $96,400. A mechanic's median salary is $57,000 per year. Elementary school teachers, $80,640. That's what we have in the tables.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a truism, but we're going to be, as we're raising the AMI, we're, you know, potentially, you know, targeting a different group that may not include those people, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, that's the upper limit, right? So, you know, if you're at 60% AMI and the regulation says 80%, like you're certainly within that. But yeah, no, 80% AMI that sounds right, 96,000 for 2-person household.
Yeah. And I also realize that's something we did talk about previously. I just wanted to kind of bring it forward. And the last thing is really whether staff has any recommendation with respect to the 7 potential amendments, or whether you're kind of waiting on us.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really talked through like a specific, it's more options on the table. I would think, you know, so, I mean, off the cuff here, like number 1, like for like, for example, that is a very reasonable change that can be very targeted and addresses a current practice, to your point of like, we're not looking at countertops with a PUD. The enhanced density bonus structure, I think we agree that the way it was presented previously is probably confusing, and there's opportunities to improve that. Expedited PUD review, I think that there's already an opportunity to do expedited PUD review absent any change. This would, I mean, but I think we would support being more explicit about it. The previously approved projects, fee and lieu, certainly a council decision, but understand the fairness issue there and the confusion on the part of a developer. The rental AMI completely, I think we'd be fairly neutral on that. We just wanted to put that on the table for just because the numbers tell a certain story, just to put it on the table. The incentives by right, I think certainly that's completely council decision in terms of should it be a shall or a may. I think we're happy to structure it either way. And then the project thresholds, the last one, that's where a final plat technically. I don't think that was I think we would, well, I don't know how, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you could have really small projects, so I think it makes sense to align it with the PUD standards at least. We don't have a lot of really small projects, so I think getting rid of the final plat threshold and being more explicit that it's, greater than 6 units makes more sense. I mean, there's always two sides to these arguments too. Even if somebody's building 3 or 4 units and we get fee in lieu, that's money for affordable housing also, and it's proportional to the number of units they're building. So there's two sides of the coin, so I don't think any of these are completely obvious. I think the only one I'd expand on is the like-for-like standards, is that, a fundamental part of inclusionary housing is to try to get the same types of units, at the very least, if not the same units, as the greater neighborhood. So certainly what we don't want is, not having any definition of the types of units, because then you might exclude the types of units that would support families, for example, because if everybody's building 1-bedroom units or studios, when the rest of the development maybe averages 2 or 3 bedrooms, you're really not going to provide the housing that we're trying to get for the whole range of residents that we're trying to attract to the community.
Good, I appreciate that. I guess I thought of one other question that I didn't ask, so it's 4. Are any of these have a benefit to us or a negative to us with respect to 123, Prop 123? I think you mentioned it with respect to expedited PUD review, but I just want to get a sense because we're hungry for those funds.
Yeah, we're still confirming with the state the exact, and I know you Kathleen, you're working on it too. I think we're still confirming with the state exactly what we need to do, but explicitly calling out expedited PUD would only help, I think, in terms of compliance with our fast track requirements.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just wanted to add some more maybe on the staff analysis too. I think that, when we're looking at trying to make this more feasible for projects, I think we're looking at the city and we haven't had very much residential development recently. I think in staff's opinion, it's not because of any faults of our inclusionary housing ordinance. It's really an issue of broader land use policies, which with the housing plan and our comprehensive plan, city council has set very different policies that we're implementing with the land development code. So I think that, thanks for the like standards. I don't know that, it doesn't seem to staff that we're not getting affordable housing and not getting development because of the inclusionary or because of the like standards. It's really about our land use policies, which we are in the process of updating. We actually have, property owners that we're working with on rezonings that you'll be seeing to try to get more significant residential development, and you've seen some of those. So I just think from the staff analysis standpoint, again, we are trying to make things more feasible based on the recommendations of our housing experts that did our housing needs analysis. We're trying to pretty closely follow their recommendations. But again, I don't know that we need to go too far, because getting the fees that would be needed to actually get our targets, as well as get the type of housing that we want to meet our housing policy and the range of housing types we want. This is all structured to try to get that.
Good. Let's go to public comment. Do we have any public comment on that tonight?
We have Peter Stewart.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Peter Stewart, Louisville resident, and I own an architectural practice here. On behalf of Strong Towns Louisville, I want to express our sincere appreciation to Council and City staff for your work on housing affordability. We share the exact same goal of creating a welcoming and inclusive community. To support this, we provided a detailed letter outlining our viewpoints and policy suggestions. To actually deliver homes, we need a thoughtful approach anchored in development reality. Hiring consultants provides helpful data, but proceeding without engaging local builders is a major misstep. As highlighted in recent research, an inclusionary policy only works if incentives mathematically offset the real financial gap of building an income-restricted unit, and those offsets must be granted by right. Discretionary votes and heavy fees introduce unpredictability at the exact moment. Financial certainty is crucial for project viability. I strongly encourage council to make direct developer outreach a core pillar of our upcoming zoning reform. Let's first reform our exclusionary zoning and build realistic incentives alongside practitioners, and then determine what changes this ordinance needs or whether an IHO is even required at all. The $200,000 that Jeff mentioned could be and should be used first. National research strongly supports this approach as detailed in our letter. If, however, council feels compelled to amend the ordinance tonight, we respectfully ask that you incorporate 4 essential safeguards amendments as you would. First, number 1, provide true by right incentives, make density, height, parking adjustments, predictable entitlements that match real costs. Shall. Number 2, exempt small projects, say 10 to 12 units, protect local missing middle infill, and avoid administrative friction for small projects. Number 3, adopt functional equivalence over like for like. Focus on the number of residents housed rather than matching luxury square footage and other things. Number 4, establish a market to affordable CDC program. Use cash in lieu funds to purchase existing homes and convert them into permanently affordable units in 30 to 60 days. Let's put the horse back before the cart and engage our development partners during zoning reform before locking in restrictive mandates. Thank you for your time, leadership, and service to Louisville.
Thank you, Peter. Any other comments this round?
No, there's no more comments.
Okay. Back to council questions and comments. Do we have any follow-up questions for Jeff or Rob? Yes. Councilmember Cooperman?
Yeah, just one question. This ordinance doesn't say anything about, or does it say anything about how we use fee and lieu funds?
No.
Okay, that was my understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Dickinson. Next.
Yeah, I appreciate Peter Stewart's comments and Andy Johnson's weighing in, and I think, I mostly agree with all those. I think some have been addressed, but yeah, generally, what the big picture thing, right, that I'm hoping to accomplish is more affordable housing. That's that's the thing, right? So what we're not trying to do is make it harder. Absolutely not. We're not trying to make it more expensive. Absolutely not. And so for me, we're also, not trying to pad the pockets of a developer and make it, super profitable. That's not the idea in any of it. It's trying to collaborate and cooperate and have it be just as profitable to bring in affordable housing as it is to bring in market housing. And that may or may not be possible, but that's the idea, right? Is to, sure. Well, I have no problem as a developer. I have no problem giving you 12%, 20%, 40%, 80%, 100%. Doesn't matter to me. The product will get me the same return on my investment. So I'm happy to provide that. And that might be too big of a goal, right? But I think what we're doing, I see in every one of these an attempt in that direction. And so when I hear pushback either before or during the meeting on the efficacy, I'm trying to see it through those lenses of like, are we accidentally making it harder to do affordable housing? Let's not do that. Are we accidentally, creating approval by right that we don't mean to be creating that's going to harm our, community in some tangible way? But I really like all these. So, you know, I think being explicit about the like for like standards, and I think everyone's sort of, the things I've heard so far are in agreement that these should be like for like, maybe in size or bedrooms, but mostly the building, the external features, and not the finishes. That I'm just going to run through that. The enhanced density bonus should be as much as we can, or entirely like by right, you know, a shall, right? I would like to see the certainty for a developer to say, hey, I know that if I do affordable housing on site, I shall get a density bonus, because I don't want to design two projects. I don't want to design a 100-unit project and a 120-unit project on the same plot of land. That's really expensive. So I just want to go with what I know I'll be able to do. And so I go a little further with the height. Same thing. It's like, I don't want to know if am I planning a 3-story or a 4-story or 2-story or 3-story? I don't know. I'll plan both and then well, they're so different in what they will bring back for that project. So I'd like that to be more certain. But what I understand that staff is trying to protect, I think, us from, or the community from, is accidentally sort of height by right, you know, where we don't mean for it to do that. But I'm hopeful that if we're going through with this tonight, that we feel confident that we can administer that, or if it takes another meeting, that we can write it in the rules of like certain distance from, you know, like any development greater than, you know, 150 yards from, and I'm not doing this from the dais, but my point is any development X distance from a current, you know, housing development is use by right or height by right. But if it's within, if it's on the perimeter, it's on the edge of something else, then it's at the discretion of council to see if it fits. And so at least developers are not in the question mark should have some certainty. So hopeful that something like that can be written, but I'm sensitive to that would be potentially difficult tonight. A lot of unknowns there. Expedited PUD review, I totally support that and hope we can go straight to final. Previously approved projects, I think should absolutely pay what they agreed to pay and shouldn't get a change mid-project. So I'd like to see that written in. I'd like to keep it at the 80%, but could hear arguments for the 60%. And yeah, I already talked about number 6. And then update project thresholds requiring, why am I? Little projects. Oh yeah, I'm totally fine letting small projects not qualify for inclusionary housing. You know, again, well, I think what the intent is that less than 6 units don't go here. So if the little language shift, I'd support that.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we go to a second round? I had one. I think I had one. Just in terms of the recommendations or the potential amendments, and, you know, getting that done, that is, if we do amendments, we're not going to be able to pass the ordinance tonight because you don't have language that's ready to go on any of them yet. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So just to set that table, if we do that, we can continue the hearing. It's not a particularly big deal to do that, which we would do, but I just want to make sure we're not going to ask anyone in the room to try to draft language. Okay. Good. Yep. Before second public comment, go ahead.
Just one question about number 3, the expedited review. You had previously, or on a couple occasions, you've talked about having to have expedited review of some form to qualify for Prop 123 funds. So I guess what I'm wondering is staff, I don't know, would staff prefer to bring in some form of expedited review at another time, or do you think it's a good idea to bring in some form of expedited review in this ordinance?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the areas where I want to distinguish the inclusionary housing ordinance from our broader affordable housing policy. So if somebody brings in an affordable housing development that's just an affordable housing development, whether it's the county housing authority or a private housing developer who's doing that. That's a completely different thing that we have to have expedited review for, is how I understand it. The inclusionary is just a requirement for a new neighborhood to have a minimal amount of affordable housing integrated within the neighborhood. So they're fundamentally different things. I think what we're talking about is trying to incentivize someone to build it and not give us the fee in lieu, because that's I think our preferred policy is what we're hearing from council. So that incentive is if you build it on site. And again, that's I think very separate from our Prop 123 commitment.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you.
Let's go to a second round of public comment. Do we have anybody who's in the queue?
There is nobody.
Okay. Then we'll take it back to council. I want to do a little bit of framing on this. In terms of the problem that we're trying to solve for here, we are, I think, based on our prior discussion, trying to fix or at least move closer to fixing the following problem, which is that our current ordinance has never produced any on-site permanently affordable deed-restricted units, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, and we're trying to get that to happen. That's on-site. We know that it is possible to, substitute fee in lieu and all of that. And one of the amendments is doing that. But that's, as I understand it, the main goal in addressing what we're doing tonight, based on our prior discussion. Obviously, if council members disagree with that, please do. But that's, I think there'll be discussion, and hopefully really good discussion around this. What I think I would propose is perhaps keying off of Councilmember Dickinson's way of talking about it, which is kind of to do a quick poll of whether people are generally in favor of each one of these amendments. And then we can get to specifics. I don't think it's clearly not going to be enough to just say, okay, fine, what you said on, because you've left some choices and some discussion for us to have, and we need to have that. But I do want to ask the question of, is anybody on council willing to support, wanting to support passage without any amendments whatsoever? Is there anybody? Okay, because that would make it easy if we were to go that route, and I didn't expect it. So if you wouldn't mind being like Caleb, I guess that's, what I'm kind of asking is for each of the council members to do that, so we have some sense of what the, general consensus is, and then we'll bear down on a couple of these. Sound good? Okay. Yes, Councilmember Hefner first.
Just want to clarify on the previously approved project bullet. I think we might, I'm not sure if we do, but I think we might have some misunderstanding about what that is. And does it, I think in all cases, right, if you're already in process, you can keep the current fee in lieu, no? We're proposing to retroactively apply this?
Oh, no, yeah. I think I misunderstood your question. If there was,
If you're already in, you can keep the old law, you can keep the old rule, but this question is whether we make the new program available to old projects. Or maybe I'm the one
No,
who's
I
confused.
think it's a little different. Do you want to take a shot at it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's when you pull your permit for the unit, not when the PUD was approved. So for East Street Village, for example, the permits have been pulled, I don't know the number yet, under the current structure. And so whatever the rule is at the time of the permit is that's the fee at that time. So if we change this and they start pulling permits after, and if we change it to say that it's the fee in lieu at time of permit, or the fee in lieu at the time of the PUD, then that fee gets locked in for subsequent permits after the ordinance is effective. That's probably not a good way to
Right,
describe it.
and I think another layer of your question is, if somebody had a PUD before we adopted the original ordinance, they wouldn't be subject to this. So it's only somebody who had a PUD approved at the time of the ordinance adoption. So even though we collect the fee at building permit, you're obligated to pay the fee when you get a PUD approved, when the ordinance is effective.
What does saying yes to number 4 mean?
So,
It's saying, it would say that the ordinance would be changed so that a developer only pays the fee in place at the time of their PUD approval, as opposed to the time of permit.
yeah, so if we pass this ordinance now, then if a PUD comes through, then whatever fee is in place when council approves that PUD, then that's locked in for 3 years. And then, I think we could be clear too that if there's a PUD that was previously approved, they're also within the 3-year time period. So when we go back to draft it, we draft it to make sure both those scenarios are covered.
So this is an edge case for developments that have a approved PUD but haven't yet pulled building permits.
Yeah, and so yes, yes,
Yeah,
it would apply to that.
for those units, yeah.
Does it apply to anybody else?
If we wrote it in a way where it just said at time of PUD approval, then yes, it would apply to others. I don't know of any. But it would apply.
It would only apply to one project that has a PUD
Yeah.
right now, an active PUD.
So saying yes to this just means we're not going to change the rule on them midstream.
Yes,
It would mean that they, in that case, they wouldn't, yeah.
yeah, and
Thank
it
you.
provides more consistency for future PUDs.
I have a follow-up to that too. So if, it's pretty frequent that, somebody gets their PUD and they don't necessarily build right away. There's often delays and sometimes quite substantial ones during that 3-year period. They expire after 3 years. But is, again, saying yes to number 4, saying to anybody coming in now, we're going to do this, we're going to do the fee in lieu amount as of the PUD.
Yeah, so I think staff's recommendation is to align with the 3-year PUD expiration. So it gets a little complicated because if they start building towards the 3rd year and they don't pull all their permits within that 3-year period, they have to come back and get that PUD extended, which is how it is written now.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
And so there'd be a fee discussion when they get the extension.
Right. In other words, this affects one current project, but it's going to affect all the others at the time, and it provides a level of certainty at the time of the PUD.
Yeah, it
of
might
what that
affect some, and again, with our land development code, I think that we're probably going to be, there's some likelihood that we'll go away from PUDs generally, and so there'll be a different structure in place, and I don't know what those expirations will be like. So again, that's part of the, why we have to coordinate the next iteration of the IHO with whatever development review structure we have. So this could, whatever PUDs we might have in the next maybe year and a half, it could affect those.
Very good. I think that's almost clear. Go ahead, Councilmember Dickinson.
Just to finalize that conversation, there's some conversation about the city manager being able to use our methodology to change this fee annually according to the market and what it should be. And so I think if we're going to allow the city manager to make administrative changes to this fee, it's really important that the fee established at time of PUD isn't changing every year with the city manager. So that's what I like about this a lot. And I think if they get to the end of the 3 years, they can file an extension, and with that filing can ask for an extension of the current fees, and we can say, yes, that we're going to keep on going.
Let's jump into the yes, no. And if you can answer yes, no, that's fine. But I want to try to go just generally through that, and then we will have additional discussion, I guess. If you feel like, absolutely, no, I don't want that amendment, under any circumstances, say no. If maybe you want that, but you want to have further discussion, or you do want that for sure, then say yes. So make it, I don't want a lot of discussion yet. Because I want to make sure we know where the discussion's going so we can move through that expeditiously. Does anybody have any question, objection, thought?
Does yes on number 5 mean keep 80 or move to 60?
I think it's
Move to 60.
It's move to 60?
60.
With the enhanced density bonus structure, saying yes, you're tying everything. The parking, the density, and the lot coverage and height.
So I know this is confusing, but the proposal, and I can bring up the slide again, is instead of saying that only projects with 100% on-site affordable at the deeper affordability level will get that 30% enhanced bonus, which is what the current ordinance is, this would open it, be more flexible and say you get an enhanced density bonus of, say, 30% if you exceed the IHO requirement. So if you build, and this is TBD, right? If you build 20%, 30% on site, whatever it is, for example, or if you have a deeper affordability. So there's different options in there that we don't quite have fleshed out yet. But the idea is to more broadly allow a density bonus, not just for 100% on-site affordable rental.
And let me expand on that a little bit too, because I think as we were further contemplating this, because this is inclusionary, we're not really anticipating projects with 100% affordability. So it really didn't quite make sense. So we thought it was more meaningful if you went from 12 to a higher percentage that you would get the bonus. And so I think we haven't done the research to figure out what percentage it should go up to. But I think that adds a lot of value to the developer, and we could come back with a recommendation if you don't want to pick the percentage tonight, but conceptually you like it. I think it might be something like going from 12 to 15 or maybe 12 to 20%, and we could try to come back with a recommendation on the final percentage if you don't want to pick that tonight.
Great, thank you.
I think I have two ways of making this even easier, I hope, than before. One is that when we go through this, we're not going to look at this list because it's so summary that there's not quite enough meat there, and it's frankly a little bit harder for the staff to remember all those things. I'm gonna ask that they call up each one of those in turn when we get to that. Get to that discussion.
And we can provide, we didn't want to bring a recommendation, but I think we have an idea, and we could try to put more structure on any of these or give you a couple options, if that helps, if you want to ask for staff to do that.
Absolutely. I would expect that staff's going to be involved in this discussion, not just the council. This is going to be a good interchange, and I'm really looking forward to it. The second is actually, I think an easier way to do this is just to ask, to go through these right now and ask for thumbs up on each one. That would be way easier. So, like for like standards. Okay, everybody wants to do that. Enhanced density bonus structure. Okay. Expedited PUD review. Okay, we've got most 5 to 1 on that. So I think we're going to go through that. Previously approved projects, fee and lieu. Okay, everybody's into that. Rental AMI, and that's 80% versus 60%. Yes, did you, I looked.
Keep it at 80?
Yeah.
Keep it at 80. I'm doing keep it at 80.
Me too. Keep it at 80.
80, 60. So that's 3.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
We're talking about that. That's 14.
Let's talk about that just a tiny bit because maybe 4 to 2 is close enough. All right. incentives by right instead of discretionary. All right, good. And updating project thresholds requiring IHO compliance. Lukewarm and 5 others, so, okay. It sounds like we're going to need to go through all of them, which is good, but that's okay. Pardon me? Because I think on some of these, I'm going to take them each. I'm trying to do this really systematically. I think if we all feel like, oh, the direction that's up there is fine, then we can say that and move on. But on some of these, you know, I haven't gotten into it, but I think there's enough ferment that we want to have a little bit more discussion, maybe some more discussion with staff too. Okay, fair enough. All right, can you go back to the like for like slide? Yeah. I think what we're looking at is kind of the 3 potential amendments there. Is there consensus to accept all of them, some of them? Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Hafner.
Yeah, I would say as laid out, I would accept all of them. I think the thing that I'm not looking for, that I can't tell, or I'm not sure if is included, is I don't think we need to be requiring identical square footage across unit types. A 3-bedroom is a 3-bedroom. It doesn't need to be the same square footage, as long as it complies with code.
Okay, others? Yes, Councilmember.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's one of the big sticking points. I think the term might have been functional equivalence. So, you know, number of sleeping units, that kind of thing. I really like the idea of removing square footage requirements, even number of garage size, like if it's a 2-car and it's going to be moving to a 1, that's fine. I don't think that has to be exactly the same. But I do think really calling out the language on not requiring anything other than code requirements, because that can't change, right? And that it is functionally equivalent. Everything else should be flexible.
I have a comment on that. I guess on the example of exterior issues, I am a little, and I guess I would include garages, carports in that. I don't know that I'm thrilled with having, or I have some concerns about, you know, allowing two carport bays for those non-affordable units and limiting the affordable units to 1. I don't know if that's what you had meant, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, the example would be, let's say you're building 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhouses. The market rate are maybe 2,400 square feet. Maybe the less expensive ones still are 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath, but it's 9 by 10 bedrooms instead of 13 by 10. Instead of a 2-car garage with the market rate, maybe it's a 1-car garage that comes. I think that flexibility for the developer allows them to incorporate different sizes that does still provide the same housing type of unit and the availability for the same number of people to live there.
And I'm not necessarily quarreling with that. I think the other one is, I'm keying off a comment that I think the director made a little bit ago about, well, no, I won't attribute it to anybody. I think I had heard it somewhere, maybe in my own head, but the idea that is not limiting, let me think how to describe this. If we say, look, developer can do whatever square footage within the building that they want for the affordable units, are we potentially discouraging, say, families And I don't know that we are. But I mean, if we could end up getting more units if they're smaller square footage, and that's a good thing.
If it's functionally equivalent, it would still allow. It would mean like 3 bedrooms, it still needs to be 3 bedrooms. It would just be smaller.
Yeah, okay. Other comments? Yes.
I would just say in general, like, we're not voting on this tonight. And so unless we're planning on having no comments when this comes back, which is kind of a joke, I'm joking, like, we're going to have these battles when it comes back. I think trying to get, like, whether it's 2-bedroom or one, or the detail, like, we want you to bring back this updated like for like. And at that point, if you bring those kind of details back, we'll quarrel then, but we're not going to solve it tonight. And so I'm concerned about getting to that level of detail with each one of these items when we will not be making that choice tonight, and we'll have another chance to nitpick the details of it. But I think the big thing is that we're sending staff back to absolutely finalize this amendment and bring it to us. And it won't be, we might tweak it, but it'll be substantively there, right? But I'm just a little concerned about, I think, 10 minutes on like for like that we all agree on, right? Like, I think we all, 6 thumbs up on like for like, we all agree on it pretty much, and we're not going to decide on it tonight. So I just think, I don't want to do 10, 15 minutes on each item if we're all in agreement. I'm excited about the ones where we're like 4-2. That seems like where we need to focus our debate tonight.
Yes, I appreciate that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to respond briefly. I actually am kind of hoping that we can vote on this next time, because I think if we're, but if we get back language next time and then we all have to disagree about it and ask for amendments, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to be able to vote on it also.
That would be the reason I am just raising a couple of these things. But I'm ready to move on.
So can I, so I'm trying to follow kind of where all, like, the majority of council is at. And I know there's been 3 council members that I've heard really clearly that want to go beyond just the interior finishes and want to allow that there's some there's a functional similarity. But I'm just curious about the majority of council, because I've only heard 3.
Okay. So it's the exterior piece that.
Right, so I think what we would want direction on is, does the majority of council want us to come back with that the units are functionally the same? And what I'm understanding that to be is that if they're townhouses, but they can be smaller and they have the same number of bedrooms. Do they need to have the same number of living rooms and bathrooms? I'm going to guess yes, unless there's disagreement about like all of the portions of the building. Or if you just want us to focus on bedrooms. So that's a point of clarification we probably want. And then I think I have a question about just exterior finishes. You know, if it's a neighborhood of townhomes that are brick and stucco, do we want to allow the affordable units just to be siding? So I think these are the details that I think we need in order to draft this one, because this is a really high-level detail one. I don't think all of them are going to be this complicated, but this one has some complications.
All right. Internally to the House, functional equivalent. I think we've got consensus, we've got unanimity on that. Okay.
So the design could be
3 bedrooms.
Nothing on the design,
Right.
and then when you say functional equivalent, it just has to have like the same number of bedrooms. And then, of course, all houses have to have cooking facilities,
Right.
and a living area, but there's nothing else. So if the townhomes have like multiple living areas, that is not required for this. And then there's no minimum square footage requirement for them. Okay, and no exterior material requirements. Okay.
I like it.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the exterior. Let's do that. Let's talk about that, because it sounds like we're agreeable on the.
I like a similar exterior look, because I do think people don't go inside each other's homes, but they do walk by them. I think having a visually different affordable unit versus market unit is a problem for me. So I'd say the exterior should be the same material.
That's fine.
I agree.
Yeah. On the carport issue I mentioned before, people not particularly concerned about that being different depending on the size of the unit or whether it's affordable or not. Josh, did you have a comment?
I don't know. I mean, that, well, it seems like that could, I don't know, could get into both the exterior compatibility and what functional equivalence means, but I don't know. I own, well, I'm not fully there on just having the same number of bedrooms, so I'm a little concerned about having different parking standards for different units, even if the same number of people could live there.
I think the direction is to draft that. You obviously we can vet that a little bit more and talk about it. Josh can raise that, or others if you're thinking about it. And do you have the direction that you need?
Yeah, I think this will be the most complicated, but I think we've got pretty good direction on that one.
I just want to make sure you have the direction so that we can have as smooth a conversation.
Yeah, I'm not thinking of, if I think of any other definitional questions, but I think you've answered the ones I've thought of so far.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to say this, but there is one more question in my mind, which is, are we talking about that, like the average number of bedrooms? Right, in a market rate development, there might be 4-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units. And I'm okay with this approach, like if they average out roughly the same, plus or minus 20%, I'm good. I don't need it to be sort of a precise distributional breakdown. I just thought I'd call that out because I think that could be a factor in the drafting.
Right. And then, something to keep in mind is some developments might have, an apartment complex and townhomes and single-family homes all included. So when you start averaging it out, I just want to make sure you're aware of that. I don't know that there's anything wrong with it. I'm just thinking through it. But if you've got like 200 apartments and 10 single-family homes and 20 townhomes, this could be some difficult math if we have a development that has a makeup like that. But we could I'll have to think that one through.
Do your best. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important that when this comes back, it's clear for us and for the developer that, for instance, if there's 20, 20, and 20, the math would say, well, you need 2.4 of this, 2.4 of this, and 2.4 of that. What does that mean? Do I do 2 or 3? Do I do 2 of this and 3 of that? Do I have to do 7.2? And does 7.2 mean 8? Or does it 7? Or like, at what point? I mean, those are real and important numbers. And if they are allowed to do 2, 2, and 2, but have to have 8 total, like, okay, you have to have a minimum of 2 each and 8 total, like that number, like that needs to be really clearly defined. And I don't super care. I think rounding correctly, like if the total is 7.4, that it rounds down to 7. If it's 7.5, it rounds up to 8. I think that's fine. And that the unit should be equivalently distributed, but that maybe gets rounded down, like a minimum of blah, 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 but that should be really clear.
Yeah, and so I think so I think we can think through that, and especially on, townhomes, single-family homes with basements and things like that. Like there is the possibility that, like with basements, like sometimes people come back and finish basements and add bedrooms. So I know there's some, I'm not trying to say that they're playing games, but there's ways to change the averages and everything else. But I think if council wants to do an average, then I think we can do the average. There's just lots of ways, not about the rounding, but just lots of ways that this could play out depending on the mix of unit types within a bigger development. If this is just a 20 townhome development, it's very, very straightforward. It's when you get the mixed use developments with mixed unit types that, and you get a 100-unit apartment complex where 80% of them are 1 bedroom, or maybe even a mix of efficiencies in 1 bedrooms, that it could become a little bit more complicated. But again, like we can work with that. And then I had one other question about lot sizes and yards as far as functional equivalency. Do you want us to say that, that there's no minimum lot or yard size for the affordable units in comparison to the market rate units?
I'm a little more comfortable with that, but Councilmember Heffinger, you're comfortable with that. Others? I mean, my concern is just that I don't want the units from the outside to be, when kids are playing, I don't want people to be looking at that yard and seeing it's really small and saying, oh, that's an affordable. I mean, I just don't want to do the, the stigmatizing, which I think can come sometimes with this. And I think that's that's an example. I don't think there are many examples of that. We just talked about one, perhaps, with carporting. I think we all agree. No, not all of us agree, but most of us agree on that. But any other thinking on that?
Well, when we move on to the point where if they did a larger amount of inclusionary units of affordable units, we're already going to give them an allowance to increase density. We're talking about giving them an allowance for increased density, greater lot coverage. So the developer might be taking that into consideration and building it in such a way that they can utilize that. And I wouldn't want that to be the inhibiting factor to get some really great affordable units in a project. It would be a shame that because somebody has a slightly bigger yard than another. I mean, in my neighborhood, there are lot variances, like 1,000 square foot difference in some of them. And I don't point at the neighbor whose yard is smaller and go, look at that. I paid more for my house than you did yours. That just doesn't happen. So I don't think that that's as big of a concern. I do agree with the your exterior finish comment that you don't want it to be discernible from the exterior of what's definitively affordable.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Yeah, I think when we're done, we're looking at the final product of this. I think what is important is kind of have a red team approach of like, okay, so if I'm a really bad developer, how can I use these rules to do it wrong? And I would be able to do it. So these 6 units are tiny. They're little 6x6 bedrooms, and there's no yard, and there's no garage, and there's only 2 windows. And it's our code, our inclusionary zoning allowed that? We got it wrong. So I think it's important to look I don't think someone's going to do that. My normal approach is hey, guys, it's going to be fine. They're going to be reasonably similar, but we do want to so should we just have the lot has to be 75% of the other lots, or is there some metric where we can kind of get rid of that? You're it's got to have 80% of the same windows. I know that becomes really complex, but is there something in there that it is valuable to not have no minimums, but we're not trying to have them be exactly the same. It's okay, they're different sizes. And I think to your point, you live in a neighborhood, they're all different houses, and clearly the tiniest house is the least expensive house. That doesn't mean they're so it's okay that they're different sizes, and 1 garage houses are less expensive than 2 garage houses, and that's okay. We all get that, but you just don't want it to be oh, those are the 6 houses, got it, right? That I think is what we're trying to avoid, and I think we'll accomplish that.
If I could just pile on briefly, I think the other thing that's true is we're not forcing anybody to live in these. They still have to be appealable enough that somebody's going to want to pay a few $1,000s a month to live there. And there are alternatives, even in the price range we're talking about, there are market alternatives in other towns and other parts of the state. And I'm not too worried that somebody's going to build a garageless subterranean hole because nobody will buy it.
Consensus that we leave that, in the example at least of the yard side, the yard sides, we just leave that non-prescriptive right in the draft. Do I generally for now, and then we'll have that out if we need it later. Thumbs up. Okay, does that give you?
Yeah, I think I've got everything unless anybody else has any other questions. I think that hits the fundamental pieces.
I'm going to say that most of the other ones are going to go faster than
I think
this.
so, yeah.
Because I think this was one that we had some disagreements on, and I'm glad we've kind of worked together at least to get the amendments moved forward. It is 8:08. I'd like to take a break until 8:15, and then we'll plow through the others. Fair enough? All right, thanks.
I was thinking like. Scenarios, you know, like, we just walking through scenarios. That's what about this unit next? What about that unit?
Yes.
So unfortunately, before we move on to number 2, there's a layer of complexity that we missed. And I don't think it was on purpose. I think it was accidental, which is the object here to make sure, and I'll just give this example, the simplified one. It's an all townhouse community, and we're going to do functionally equivalent. Do we want the developer to be weaving those affordable units in, or do we want to have the allowance of saying, here's 3 townhouse buildings, and then there's the 4th one? And that's all the affordable. All the smaller units, all the smaller yards, they're completely separate, or do we want it to be part of the fabric of the community?
I can give an example of this, right? If we have a bigger mixed-use development with 500 units, and the average ends up being, 2 bedrooms per unit, but it's a mix of apartments and townhomes and single-family homes, I think the direction we got is a developer could just put all 12% in the apartment units because they're 2-bedroom apartments. So I think when you say functionally equivalent, if there's single-family homes, duplexes, and apartments, they have to be proportionally split out. And then there's the other layer of, again, if it's like a 30, 40 acre development with all these different things, there's the possibility that the developer will take a block within that development and put all of those units within a block within the development, because it might make design sense for them to do that within a block of the development. So is that okay? Was that something that council would support?
I think it's a legitimate point to raise. Yeah, Councilmember Hefner.
I'll just say, I'm pretty comfortable with allowing it wherever the developer wants to put it. And one reason is this, or other reasons, but one reason is this. Consider what we're talking about in Centennial Valley, where they're building one concentrated project to satisfy the requirements for a bunch of other projects. It's different parcels, but it's the same idea. And I don't think we objected to that. And you can imagine the same thing on a smaller scale, right? If you chopped it up and made it 4 projects, you could do the same thing and say, we're gonna build 100% over here, and that's gonna satisfy offsite for these other ones. To me, it's not a big deal. The important thing to me is getting the units. And I think there has to come a cutoff point at which we all acknowledge we are taxing construction of new units. And if we are going to impose this pretty substantial tax on new construction, we have to offer some relief in terms of making it possible for the projects to move forward, or we will, and I'm not sure this is the hill I'm gonna die on, but if we add too much, we will continue on as we have with zero development, including affordable housing of any kind, and I don't think that's what we're after.
Yes, Councilmember Dickinson.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think it is really complex, and that is tough. I think I am convinced by the piece you're talking about, like, we're so excited for this 100% affordable housing project. It's like the biggest win. I'm like going over there and high-fiving Rob after the meeting, like, we got a 100% affordable housing project. This is so great. Oh, everyone who lives in that, well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. Everyone who lives in that area or Kestrel or otherwise, like, yeah, I guess there's a little bit of like knowledge of that, but they're beautiful units and they're great, they're well made and all those things. And so I think, yes, if you're doing 4 buildings and one of the buildings is the affordable units, it's like, yeah, that's the reality of that. But they're living right there in the same community, walkable to the same places with the same weather in the same community and the same schools. And it's really cool, but their units are a little smaller and they're in the building that doesn't have the best views of the mountain. Right, like you've put your higher price market units with the better views, and maybe your top story is worth more than your bottom story. All those different things, right? Like end of the hall versus front of the, like, yeah, I think that's where you actually get these things to work. And what we've done is make it hard, make it really hard to do affordable. And we're trying to make it easier, and I think this is an example of, I think I'll make it a little easier. And those units would naturally be a little less expensive because they don't have the best views. So easier to do those as the affordable ones because it won't be such a hit to make those affordable. So I think it's smart, and I don't think I think we just need to have the protections that, like, and I know those aren't made out of cardboard, right? Those aren't actually bad units. They're still really nice units, and what does that mean? What does it mean they're still really nice units. And I think that's where the gray area is, but I think it's okay to generally allow for this separation.
So, yeah, I kind of agree. And this, I think, goes back to the exterior being the same. Because if it looks just like all the other buildings, then, it's functionally going to feel like it for people. And as they're driving through, you wouldn't really notice much of a difference. This to me, as well as the parking, are kind of the compromise areas that I'm not super comfortable with, but I think are a necessity to see if this helps. Because right now, what we do doesn't work. And if this can help, we need to find a way to encourage developers to do this. And so I'm on board.
Anyone else? Okay.
Sorry if I just want to make sure I understand, because I've heard two different things.
I should have said, is there any staff
Yeah,
comment?
so I've heard two. I think what I'm hearing is that there shouldn't be distribution amongst unit types, that you can put all the units of a certain type as long as they're, because I think that's what I heard from Councilmember Hefner, was that if you want to just do an apartment complex, as long as you're hitting the functional bedroom equivalent, then that's okay. Versus if it's a mix of single-family homes, townhomes, and apartments, you have to have all of those unit types. So those are two different things.
I think, and again, this is the problem with, sorry, thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm jumping. I don't want to make a really good project that is potentially coming forward to us not happen because something is already underway with us changing this. But I think it should be, if they're townhouses and apartments, you need to have townhouses and apartments that are affordable. You can't just make them all apartments, or you can't just say, an ADU is an acceptable substitution for a townhouse complex. So I actually, my personal opinion is, I think it needs to be, is it the unit type? Is that what you're saying, Rob?
Yeah, like the unit type. If they're single-family attached, single-family detached, multifamily, that we would have the same proportion of all those. Now, this doesn't stop the city council from ever doing alternative agreements, to be clear. So if you're doing an alternative agreement, this wouldn't impact that.
Okay, so I do think that it should be in that sense. I don't think you should be allowed to just put apartments instead of townhouses for a townhouse complex.
I didn't get the sense that was what our like for like was about. I got the sense that what we were talking about here was, if you have 3 buildings in a development and you decide for whatever reason that you're going to concentrate the affordable units in one of those 3 instead of dispersing them, that I understood Councilmember Hefner saying that's fine. And I think I agree with that. Is that what you were saying?
No, I'm not sure it is exactly. And I guess I have a question, which is, again, taking the Centennial Valley project as the example, is that 100% affordable project going to contain all the same mix of townhouse, apartment, single-family unit types as the projects for which it is satisfying the requirement?
No, yes, and that's why that's through an alternative agreement.
Yeah.
So I think that,
So I guess what I'm in favor of is that arrangement. Like, if you want to satisfy it all in one place with one type, if you're producing essentially the same number of bedrooms, on average, I guess I'm indifferent as to whether it's a townhome or an apartment or a single-family home or whatever the case may be. That's exactly what we've approved in Centennial Valley.
Councilmember Cooperman, and then Councilmember Dickinson, and then Councilmember Kern. Go ahead.
So, I think I agree with Councilmember Kern on this point. I'd like to see in this ordinance distributed among the different types of units. And I think the difference, or a difference, with the Centennial project is that one is more deeply affordable than what we're going to be likely going to be requiring here. And I think that makes a pretty big difference.
Yeah, I apologize, but I think this is really complex. What I wrote as a suggestion, so I'll just read it, was to require that affordable units be equivalent to market rate units in square footage, unit type, exterior appearance, and durability, while expressly permitting differences in interior finishes, fixtures, appliances, and other features that do not materially affect the durability or exterior integration of the affordable units. Like, some leeway, but what that does say is unit type, is that like, yes, you can't build 6 little condos in a single-family home space. Like, that doesn't really do it. Now, could we approve it with an alternative agreement? I guess, and maybe we'd want to for some reason, but I think the default would be, you're doing 20 of those, you need to do 2.4 of these, and that's why I want to know, is it 2 or is it 3? But no, you should. If you're doing 20 of those, you should do 2 of those. And if you're doing 40 of those, you should do 4 of those, right? So I think there should be similarity in unit type, but the square footage could be different.
Councilmember Kern.
I was just going to say that I don't think that the square footage piece should be in there. I think that
Sorry,
changes the functionality.
That's in the other one.
Oh, okay.
So I read it wrong.
Yeah.
I added it to my sentence and added it in the wrong section. So it would be, the square footage could be different, but not the unit type.
Okay, yes, I agree. I think the other reason is I think when we're talking about ownership potential, there's an awful lot of rental opportunities. There's so little ownership opportunity that is affordable. And I think one of the best aspects of this is to try to encourage purchasable affordable, deed restricted, right? So somebody could buy a townhouse, not rent an apartment in a development where they are building for purchase items. So if you're building 100 for purchase units, then your deed restricted ones should be for purchase. They should not be for rent apartments when you're building a for purchase townhouse community, if that makes sense. So that's why it needs to be similar, the unit type, but no restriction on square footage, that it should just be functional.
I certainly agree with that.
I guess I have a question, which is, isn't that the purchase rental distinction going to be true either way?
Yes, it would. So if you have, 100 for sale homes and 100 apartments in a new development, 12 would have to be for sale to match the homes.
There's no world in what's being proposed where you can satisfy the on-site requirements for sale market rate through rental.
No, I don't think that hasn't been anticipated.
Yeah. So it really is just about form. We're just talking about form.
It's just unfortunate because for purchase, because of defect laws, they're not building condos, they're not building apartments for purchase. They do townhouses and single families, twins, duplexes, quadplexes. They're doing all of those for purchase, but we're not really seeing the apartments. So that's my concern with allowing the substitution of that. If it was for purchase condo complexes, I'd probably be a little bit more inclined to think that would created the same opportunity, but that's not what anybody's building right now.
But I think there is no substitute. You can't substitute the rental.
That's right. So then you shouldn't be able to substitute like a for sale townhouse with a for rent apartment, I guess is my point.
Yeah, and what I think what Rob just said, and then I'll
He
be done,
can't.
is
We don't allow that.
That's not allowed currently, isn't proposed to be allowed, regardless of what amendments we adopt. You can't use a rental unit to satisfy your on-site requirement for a for-purchase development.
Good.
Anyone, and I think that's what Councilmember Kern was proposing. Yeah?
Yeah, my point is just that is true regardless as to whether we require like to like as between a townhouse, a condo, and a single-family house.
Okay. Do you have enough direction on that? I think we're all comfortable with those. Sounds like Councilmember Kern's initial proposal plus the clarification that
So
Councilmember
the way I
Hefner-
understand Councilmember Kern's proposal, which I think is different from Councilmember Hefner's proposal, is that Councilmember Kern is proposing that that you have to have the same proportion of unit types. So if you have 100 single family, 100 townhomes, and 100 apartments, you have to have 12 single family, 12 townhomes and 12 apartments, where that, I think, Councilmember Hefner is suggesting that all we want to align with is for sale and for rent, and they could be anywhere, and as long as they're functionally equivalent, then that, so I'm hearing two different things.
Correct. Okay. Well, then let's, we understand the distinction that is being drawn. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm just going to ask Councilmember Kern if she wants to clarify further.
Actually, I was going to ask this of staff is, I'm pretty sure I know the answer already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you see a world where if somebody is building single-family townhouses, that they're going to be building for sale condos as their?
No, I don't think condos. I think the distinction is if you're building maybe, single-family homes or townhouses that that what you could see in a neighborhood is that they will, put the affordable ones within a very particular, and I think you've talked about this, but I think they're going to be part of the neighborhood, like Councilmember Dickinson said, they're still going to have all the same amenities of the neighborhood. But I think what we're opening up is that they could just be, within a particular part of the neighborhood. So you might have like a row, it could be integrated, but we wouldn't require it through the code. So there's the possibility you'd have like a row of 4, 1,200 square foot homes, when the rest of the town, the 3,000 square foot townhomes are on different blocks, and they just create like a block of smaller townhomes. So I think, I'm not judging that and saying that's a bad thing. I just want to make sure that we're aware that that's how the ordinance would be drafted to allow.
I think that, yes, and that is actually what my understanding is, as long as the exterior, we talked about like exterior similarities though, right? It wouldn't be distinguished because, well, that block of buildings is all siding even though everybody else has stone.
And I think the big difference is, like, if you have a single-family neighborhood, you could then do row homes or townhomes, and those would be the designated affordable units, even if the whole rest of the neighborhood was single-family, detached. And so that's the equivalent, because they would all be for sale. So that's what we would allow.
I find that acceptable. That's the compromise. Yeah, but exactly, for sale means for sale.
Okay.
And it is a compromise still, but I think it helps make it feasible.
Okay. Who's on board with?
I love it. I think remember, one of the main things we're trying to do is avoid a simple fee in lieu, where we take that fee and then go do an entirely affordable space anyway. So we're just asking them to do it as part of their project, and it might be slightly different. So would the fee in lieu use be entirely different, potentially?
That's an excellent point.
It sounds like there's consensus on that, if not entirely.
Well, unless we come up with another topic, I think I have good direction on that.
All right.
We'll work on that.
Going once, going twice, done. Number 2, enhanced density bonus. The potential amendments are the 4 below. Are we agreeable as to all 4 of those, or are there clarifications, changes, substitutions? Councilmember Hefner?
Just give me a second. I think, conceptually, yes, I think the numbers matter.
And Councilmember Dickinson, just what's your thought?
I think I'm fine with it. I basically don't want to talk about it. I think that in what we're talking about, inclusionary, the chances of people going above 12% are super slim. I don't think you're going to see 20%. I think this is sort of inconsequential, but sure. Yeah. Like if someone wants to go to 20%, sure. So I think if you really want to put some teeth in it, you do say something like 15%, right? Like it's barely any more and you get 30% instead of 20%. So I think to Dietrich's point, the numbers matter, but I think generally, I don't think this is going to have a huge impact.
Councilmember Hefner?
But I agree, and I guess I would propose we adopt the numbers here, 30% for hitting 20 or higher ownership and rental, and I would keep the cap, but not the average. But I would keep one or the other. I'd pick the cap, but I don't really care if it's the cap or the average.
Other thoughts?
I think if the average allows for more opportunity, then that's what we go with. If the cap is what allows for more developer opportunity, then but so I would defer to staff on this one. Whichever one of the two that they would recommend that would be more palatable is what we should use.
We could make it disjunctive, cap or average, either under the cap or below the average.
I think on ones like this, I hate to be, sorry, I didn't ask for a question.
No, go ahead.
I hate to be the math teacher in me, but like, I hate average. It should be median, because you do, one 40% and one 120%, and the average is skewed, but it's hard to go any lower than 60. I would actually use median instead of average, because it's a better measure of center.
Does staff have comments?
Yeah, and admittedly confusing how it's framed, but looking at the last bullet point, that's really just aligning with the low-income housing tax credit metric for affordability. So everything under 80, average of 60, that's all that is. So if you wanted to go above 80 and just keep it average at 60, so you could do some at 120, some at 40, I think it's still achieving an objective and providing more flexibility. Also did want to clarify that, several things could be true under this amendment proposal to get the 30%. So you could have the deeper affordability and exceed the 12%, both or one. So I think we could have, that was the intent, if that makes sense.
I would say it's more important to have the quantity instead of the deeper affordability, just because we really need units that people can move into.
So maybe we just get rid of the fourth bullet, and if you go 20 or above, you get the enhancement.
Yes, Councilmember Cooper.
Yeah, I guess I'd prefer both options. Either you can you provide 20% of affordable units, or you provide more deeply affordable ones in some particular way.
Just to move through this, why don't we keep the 4 bullets, and we can have it out at the, don't want to do that? Yes? Decide that? Okay. All right.
We're all here talking about it right now. We might as well just decide it's going to be the same people discussing the same topic. Just in the future when we've forgotten everything we said tonight.
Well, I think the point of trying to do this as, there's some things that we may need to flesh out. I think there's some of this that we're going to get community input on that'll be helpful. We'll see what the staff comes back with. We can't solve everything. We're going through basically by mostly.
I think to my earlier point, the chance of someone going to 20% is very slim. If they go all the way to 20%, are we really going to sit here and talk about whether it's 60% or 65% or set oh my God, you went to 20%? Yeah, absolutely. You can have the density bonus.
Yes.
I think we're nitpicking at that point.
That's fine. Yes.
Thank you, Mary. I just want to remind council, so this is an interim update, and we will be reviewing our larger development code and have more opportunities to make further updates as part of that process. So I just want to couch that while you're welcome to make amendments tonight, we'll bring those back. We'll set a date depending on the scale of the amendments you make tonight. Be mindful that there's not additional engagement happening between this second reading and the continued second reading, and this is not the last discussion you get to have on IHO.
I think we take Caleb's suggestion and just move it forward.
Second.
All right, that's the deal. All right, let's go to number 3. Unless there are other issues, going once, twice, sold, we're on number 3 now. Expedited PUD review, there are 2 suggestions there. Are people comfortable with those, both, or not? Yes, Councilmember.
My only objection to this is if we think we can expedite the PUD process because it's not serving some urgent public interest or safety need or community engagement need, we should expedite it for everything. I do not want to start offering expedited review for some favored projects over others. Like if our PUD process is too slow, let's fix it, but not start creating exceptions to it.
I think what I would say about that, I'm not disagreeing with that. We're just dealing with expedited PUD review with respect to IHO on site. That's all we're doing tonight. I'm not saying that we don't do that for other things. I think you raise a good point about doing this across the board with other kinds of projects that aren't this. But
yeah, I'm just not willing to do it only for this until we fix it across the board, because I'm worried we're not. When it comes to fixing it across the board, there's going to be lots of reasons. We need a preliminary and a final, and community engagement, and we need more information, and so on and so on. And I would like to raise this at that time.
yeah, I don't think that's taking a position on this right now is going to make, nobody's going to be barred from taking a different or more nuanced position later on. It's just that will be folded into a larger discussion. In fact, we could come back and if we don't like, if we come back and with a different proposal, we come back and change this for that matter. But anyway, I want to keep us on. I can understand where you say, I want that one out. That's what I'm hearing is take out the first bullet. Is that, or am I not?
I think the answer to the first bullet is yes, but we could do a better job on permitting. This is a complaint we hear over and over again across the board, and yet we continue to, like, we added the new review. You have to go through PPLAB and OSAB anytime you want to do any public land dedication, which extended our permitting when we've heard a lot of complaints about this, and we add and add and add to land use review and permitting. And when it comes time to simplify it, there's always a lot of reasons, like in that discussion about, well, it's really important that PPLAB weigh in, and it's really important that OSAB weigh in, and we need preliminary, and we need final, and we need 2 rounds of comments, and we need to postpone this to the next hearing so we can hear more. And I don't want to do it here and miss the opportunity to make our process better for everyone across the board.
And my point is I'm trying to get this done tonight just with respect to IHO on site.
Yeah.
If later on, everything's on the table later, don't disagree, that's a separate issue.
No, I'm just offering the reason why I'm against it.
Okay, other thoughts? Are people comfortable with both, with the Hefner qualification? I'll even say that, no, all right, anyway. That we're going to deal with it later. Pardon me? Sometimes. All right, sometimes it is. Let's move on. Unless you need any other issues? 1, 2, 3, go. Number 4. All right, previously approved projects, fee in lieu. We had some discussion about this. And I think we were gonna, let's see, are people comfortable with the potential amendment on this one? Yeah, well, we got a 6-0 on that. Let's go to number 5. Do you have any other clarifications? Are we good?
Making the most straightforward one.
Yeah, yeah. We are more than half the way. All right. Potential amendment, rental AMI 80 to 60. This would be 60% AMI standard for required on-site rental units. This is one which would, well, I won't restate your statement about it. Looks like we got 2 no's, 3 no's. I don't know. I'm favoring that one. 33. All right. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Hafner.
I just have a comment on this one, which is, we're at the 80 level, we're picking a number that isn't supported by the model. The model says there's a negative gap, and we're imposing a positive number, which strikes me as sort of, at least on paper, unfair. I recognize the model is probably imperfect and based on imperfect data, and there may be good reason to think a positive number is appropriate, but it gives me some discomfort to say that the market is already producing units at this level of affordability, but nevertheless, we're going to impose these requirements or a fee on you in order to get you to a level of affordability you're frankly, at least according to our data, already at. I think I can live with it, but I hope when it comes reevaluation time that we do not continue to just sort of pick a number because it doesn't seem aligned with our otherwise rigorous approach to this topic.
Since we are, go ahead.
And I was going to say, I think when we're looking at, I think it was Boulder data too, not Louisville data, about the same, there are some really old buildings that are part of this. When you look, like even here within our city, and you look at newer construction, that is not applicable. Like look at DeLo Boom rental rates, 3,000 plus. That's not meeting the AMI requirements for 80%. So that they're not there. So I would that's why I don't like this idea of lowering it, that they need to bring this down to the 60%. I think people who are at the 80% AMI are still really struggling to find places to afford to live in Louisville.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry.
I want to make a proposal, but
I just want to be clear. I think I agree with you. I don't think you were disagreeing. Were you?
I thought, pardon me, I thought that you were saying, so we both are in the same position. This should not be lowered from 80% AMI down to the 60.
I don't want to go to 60. I just think the fee for 80 is at least according to our own methodology, not supported. The fee for 80, according to our methodology, should be essentially a refund to the developer, not a fee. But what we're proposing to do is use the fee calculated based from 60 and charge that fee to the developers hitting 80, which strikes me as sort of unfair.
We're doing the fee in lieu calibrated to the 60% AMI is what this says, but we're requiring 80% AMI. So that is the right way to do it, to say if you're on site and you're doing it, you need to have, like, exactly, if you were doing 100%, it would be 80% below.
So we're charging the fee that would apply if we were
60.
requiring
The
60.
But we're allowing them to build up to the 80% AMI.
Yeah,
So it's actually better and easier for them.
And at 80, the fee should, according to our methodology, which may be imperfect, should be zero. In fact, it arguably should be negative.
No, I think that, I appreciate that clarification. I appreciate the explanation, which does change my mind. But others, Councilmember Cooperman, did you have a comment or not?
Sure.
You don't have to. I saw your.
Yeah. I mean, one question you could ask is, if we take the data we have and we restrict it to Louisville only, which maybe that data set is too small to work with, but you could ask, does that data set, if you go through the same analysis, what numbers do you get just looking at data from Louisville? And that might then support, an 80% requirement as opposed to a 60% requirement. Or maybe the fee in lieu calculation changes, and at 80%, you get a positive number instead of a negative one. And I don't know I mean, I don't doubt that there are people who would still like to have, or who are looking for 80% AMI affordable units in Louisville. There are also people who are looking for lower AMI units in Louisville. Mostly I feel like sort of this moment in time where market rate is very close to 80% AMI, it's sort of an opportunity to go lower in our inclusionary housing ordinance. And, you know, and then we could always revise that at, say, when we do the full development code update. That's mostly what I've been thinking. I mean, on the other hand, right, it could be that in a few years, we'll get a divergence again where market rate is higher than 80%, and it would have been good to get 80% deed restricted units now. So it's just hard to really know. But I feel like there's a lot of need at the lower percentages, and so I'd like to try to address that need at a moment in time where I feel like there's an opportunity to do that.
So I'll ask the question again. Do we stay with 80? Is there, let's just, okay. And I'm convinced now, right now. We'll see if there's more information coming. But do you have good guidance on that? I appreciate your comments. I think we all do. All right, let's move to number 6. Entering the home stretch now. Council, keep on working. All right, this one. This is the by right one. Are we all? Okay.
I want discussion.
Yeah, that's fine. Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. I actually, I like, because I think the placement and different setbacks will still apply within a lot development. I think that allowing for additional lot coverage, so unrestricted lot coverage, I think by right, if they meet the requirements, I think, and this is one of my big things, is the big objections, but this is a point of compromise for developers, in my opinion, is to allow them to not have a parking requirement if they meet the criteria by right, so that they can just, they shall. And I think the density increase, and the density increase, in my opinion, is by having more lot coverage opportunity. I do not think that height incentive should either be a shall. I also don't think that it should be an incentive for low income. I think we have a process for developers to come and ask for a variance in their height, and I think that that process should be followed. It should not be, if you do a certain amount of low income in your complex, we'll consider that to be the reason for additional height. I think that the community members overwhelmingly in Louisville, this is the #1 issue that they have all the time. When they point to, we don't want to look and feel like the new downtown Superior in our areas, it is mostly around the height. So I don't want this to become like where we absolutely just allow it, and it shouldn't specifically be an incentive for this either. It should just be part of our process that they, if they want to ask for height. But I like increasing the density, and they can get to that through lot coverages and not having the parking minimums, and that should be a shall, and staff can make those determinations.
Other comments? Yes, Councilmember Dickinson.
I basically agree with all that, but what I was trying to, thread the needle of, can we make it shall in certain areas of town, right? So like, I think, if we had the time and ability to look through and be like, yeah, I'd let 3 stories there, I'd let 4 stories there, I'd only let 2 stories there, make that decision and then make it shall. Like, yeah, no, but if you're building in that area, you can. But you're building an area where you shall get 2 stories. You can come ask for 3, but you may not get it. But this other area, you shall get 3. You can come ask for 4, but you may not get it. But there are areas where you shall get a 3rd story or a 4th story without having to wonder. And then the areas that we would maybe be a little concerned about, there is language that says, in those areas of town, on the peripherals or those things, you may get a height, that height bonus will be contingent on council approval, but you get certainty if you're not in that ribbon, if you understand. So that's what I was kind of hoping for, is places where there's certainty, but I think height is different than the rest, and I think Rob has done a really good job of kind of convincing me of that, of careful with height, because if you just allow height in the wrong spot, you could upset a lot of people. You might want more control, but maybe not universal control. So that's what I'm hoping for. And I don't know if we have faith in council or staff being able to bring back some nuance to what is by right and what is council discretion. Rob, do you have any thought if that's an impossible mission or reasonable?
Jeff can weigh in too. So I think I think it's difficult. I mean, as an incentive, right? I mean, hopefully with our land development code, we can define allowed heights around town and have more certainty. But at this moment in time, in a bigger like if we want to say that single-family neighborhoods should have a buffer, we're going to have new single-family neighborhoods built potentially. So we don't know where those are to have those buffers. That adds complexity. So I think that I guess we're back to two options. One is we say it has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and other city policies for height, and that'll give the flexibility and discretion, but it doesn't add the certainty for the height. But I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. It's really up to council on what you want from balancing the predictability and the potential community concern.
Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. I actually like that suggestion, Director Zuccaro, and I think that we do have the land development code update conversation, and I think that might be a better time for staff to, and other advice to come into the districts. Like maybe it is pointed out, like in portions of Red Tail, it seems appropriate to change this, and then we do, but I think we should just follow currently what we have with our documents for the height, but have the shell for all the other things.
I think in practice, like when you're building single-family homes and you want to do some affordable units, you're not like, can I get a fourth story on these single-family homes? Like that makes no sense. You don't get more affordable, right? You only want the extra floor when units are stacked on each other. And so you're only getting height, like the height bonus only helps you if you're in that product, right? Like, I don't understand how a height bonus is really going to benefit a single-family home development.
It uses less square footage. The first floor is smaller, so actually it is a much less expensive thing to build a 4-story single-family home that is in a smaller footprint, and you can have more of them in a smaller footprint. Is actually less expensive for developers, and that's what you're seeing new as a new trend. Same thing like not putting in basements because it's expensive to add a basement.
Councilmember Dickinson, did you have?
No, I mean, I'll let staff, you seemed like you had a thought on that.
It's definitely more geared to a multifamily stacked as wanting the additional floor area, but I mean, it is certainly possible for single family and townhomes to want an additional story, but you're not getting an additional unit because it's it's ground to sky as a townhome or a single family, so you would just be getting more square footage for that unit, but maybe there's construction cost implications. I'm not sure about that.
Councilmember Hefner.
I'm going to throw an idea out there.
Councilmember Cooperman.
Director Zuccaro can tell me this is a bad idea that he doesn't want. But one idea is we could put something in that you get the height by right, where the city manager or director of community development determines it's not going to impact current or future residential development. Like, I would be comfortable with the director making that decision, but I don't know if he would be.
I think in a lot of cases, because usually when we put those things in, we can say we can make a decision or we can defer to city council. Yeah. But I think the problem is now that we don't have an administrative process that we could fully implement that, because you're still going to have. So what I don't want to do is make a decision and then it goes to city council and then maybe that gets questioned at the time of a city council discretionary hearing. So I think but I think conceptually, as we're working towards more predictable processes, I think that's a good thing, because then I think we can use good judgment and say this is going to cause community concern and defer it to city council if we had administrative approval rights right now. Does that make sense? Because there's a distinction there.
Maybe that leaves me, I think, where Councilmember Curran is, which is it's a topic to save for when we get through the development code updates.
So am I understanding that we definitely want, Councilmember, you may want to wait, Councilmember Dickinson, until I articulate something so you can disagree with it if you have to, that on height, we're comfortable right now in saying that that's not going to be by right, that's going to be subject to council approval? Okay. And the other ones, the other incentives, are we comfortable with shall? Okay.
I'll
And
just.
what other incentives are we throwing in there? Is that what the question you're going to ask, or is
No,
another one?
I was just going to say in Colorado, at least shall is something that a person must do, and is or must is typically something that an inanimate object does.
I will leave that.
But I leave that in the hands of our experts.
Yes. Well, not so much the experts, but maybe the council on that. Or both. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's will allow. Like, you made this requirement, we will allow. It's not shall, it's will.
We're not going to, I made a pledge to staff that we would not draft on the dais. So that's my concern. But I think you get the gist unless we're convinced by what Councilmember Coopens about to say.
I was just going to clarify. So it's parking reduction, density bonus, lot coverage bonus.
Are there others?
Fee waiver.
And fee waiver. Yeah.
I think that was it.
Yeah. Good. Comfortable with that? Do you have enough direction?
Shall on all of those, or must? May with height.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other changes? Everybody's thinking a little harder on this one. All right, let's go to number 7. This is adjusting the project thresholds. I think we all agreed that we should be doing some changes on this. First of all, well, I'm just stating what we did before, but is there any particular language or not language, but concepts we want them to focus on? Yes, Councilmember.
My recommendation is that it does not follow the PUD guidelines, but that we set it at 10 units.
Second.
Yeah. I was going to make a slightly different suggestion, but it also comes back to my question about how we do rounding. I was going to say, like, you know, when 12% translates into 1 unit, maybe that's the threshold.
I think it's 9.
So, right.
I think it's 9. If you want a whole unit, if you want almost a whole unit, it's 8.
Whose arithmetic is going to prevail in this one?
I was actually going to recommend.
Councilmember.
Thank you. I was going to recommend 12 units and not 10, only so that somebody could put in like 3 quadplexes and we'd be fine and they wouldn't have to have the inclusionary. But 10 seems to be what we've heard. And so 10, 12, I'm good with that. 9 or 8 might be a little slight. So.
What's the number, Council?
I think if 9 is the mathematical number, 10 makes a lot of sense. People are used to round numbers, and it just makes a lot of sense. I think to your point, like if you did 7 and then they don't have to build any, then what's the point, right? Like if 7 doesn't trigger an affordable unit, then why are we even doing this? So if it's 9 that triggers one, I think rounding to 10 is probably fine with me. I'd go 9 or 10.
Second.
10, at least for right now. We'll have the arithmetic discussion at our follow-up. Any other changes to that one? All right, going back, we're going to have to continue this, but I wanted to find out if staff have any other questions or issues that have come up or that you've thought about between the first one and the last one. So I'll get to you.
Can't think of any. Yeah.
You have a good sense of what the amendments are going to.
I think so. I will personally rewatch this discussion for clarity, but
Yeah.
Bless you.
You get to eat the glass.
Yeah, but it felt like in the moment that he had clarity on each of the 7. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate staff having to do that once in a while, because I know it does happen. Councilmember Cooper, did you want to raise a question about that? Any other thoughts about that? I do really appreciate the tenor of the discussion, and although this was a long discussion, I think we made enormous progress, and I wanted to say thank you to the staff for that, council, and all the people who provided some additional thinking. I think we needed, what I was going to suggest is we do a motion to continue, and I'll do that right. And do we need a
date and time
call?
certain?
And
Oh.
a time certain, yeah. Do we need a roll call?
You don't need a roll call.
No? Okay, do we need, so we need a motion. When can we do that? What's the
We
next?
would recommend following up on September 15th.
September 15th
And you'd
at
say
6 p.m.
Mhm.
It's in the, if we cheated a little bit. Good. Yeah, I see it. Somebody want to make a motion to?
So moved.
Okay, well.
Second.
Let's, so the motion is, I move to continue the public hearing for ordinance number 1936, series 2026 to September 15th, 2026 at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. All right, so the next issue, we have it down for appointment of 2 council members to conduct annual evaluations of the Louisville municipal judge and prosecuting attorney. I want to, I don't know that there's any, there's no staff presentation on this, correct? There has been some discussion, and we've gotten some input around, whether, how we go about doing the evaluations of the municipal judge and the prosecuting attorney. And we might want to have a little bit of a discussion about how that's done. I am inclined to call upon whoever on the staff or the city attorney to discuss or to at least mention whether, what's done in other jurisdictions or not done. And then maybe we can have a discussion amongst ourselves. Is that comfortable with that? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I did do a little bit of polling. The 2 municipalities that responded to me do not review their prosecuting attorney and their municipal judge on a regular basis. I also asked the judge and the prosecuting attorney if they're reviewed in the other jurisdictions that they work in. The judge indicated that only 1 other municipality reviews him on a regular basis, and it's done by a third party contracted through their HR department, not council. The prosecuting attorney, her other municipalities, she is actually a member of the city attorney's office. So she's not appointed, so she gets reviewed when the city attorney's office is reviewed.
I want to add one thing just in the way of background, because I don't know whether everybody, well, I know that not everybody was on council when we came up with the current process, which is to have a couple of council members, go over and sit in usually twice, it's pretty minimal, in 2 different sessions over at the municipal court and watch the judge, watch the prosecutor in action. We can discuss whether that was useful. The criteria that we put together, I was involved in that, and we kind of put together criteria that typically, at least for the municipal judge, based on what the Judicial Commission which evaluates district judges and county judges in Colorado, just criteria that are similar, not identical, but similar to those, and more or less objectively be able to evaluate. I think that the reason why we decided to do an evaluation at all, we didn't before, but we had a couple of reasons. One, we have a contract with both of these folks, and I remember one year when we didn't have a process, people said, oh my gosh, how do we know whether this is a good idea to renew the contract or not? And so we didn't really have any objective basis. It was sort of like, well, are we happy generally? Do we hear anything bad? Okay, let's just approve. We have had some very minimal concerns raised over the years about each, like the municipal judge. I can think of one occasion where there was an issue that was raised, and the prosecutor, they're sometimes, frankly, disgruntled litigants, which happens. So there's that. The other thing I would just raise is it's some people might be a little uncomfortable with a body like ours, a legislative function, evaluating a judge. They're technically appointed by us, but there's always the chance that we're sort of impinging on what judges do. I just throw that out. I don't know that that's really critical for me, but I do throw that out as a concern. So anyway, all of that, throw this open for whether we change our system or we keep it. Yeah.
I just want to say a couple things. One is something we do as part of this process, which you all probably know, is we get feedback forms from court staff, from defendants. We get a feedback from the prosecutor on the judge and the other way around. As well as, I'm trying to think that there's another category maybe.
You said the police, right?
The police, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So we get good comprehensive feedback, which in my view is at least as valuable as like sitting in court for a morning, during which it's not, you get a good sense for the feel. But to me, the written feedback from the people who are doing it day in and day out is extraordinarily helpful. I was one of the people who thought, oh, maybe we should have a more formal, different process for this. After thinking about it to prepare for this meeting, I'm happy with the process we have, and whatever process we do should continue to include the feedback from all those groups, because I think that's immensely valuable. And if something was going on that we would need to know about, I think that's the main way we would discover it. And so that's important. And then I do think, because for better or for worse, we have to make the decision about whether to renew these contracts or not. We have to have an evaluation of some kind, awkward as it may be. And then the final thing I'll say, and then I'll stop, is I found it immensely valuable to have them come visit with all of us. And I think whether that's part of the evaluation or not, and maybe it shouldn't be, that should be an annual touch point so that we all do have a better sense of what's going on in the court.
On that last point, I believe, depending on how we do this, we could change it, but I think the evaluation of the judge and the prosecutor are scheduled, is it before?
Currently after
It's
they have a
after
joint
they
meeting.
present to us and talk a little bit, which, you know, you don't want that to be performative, right? But I don't think, frankly, that certainly wasn't performative last year. I would expect that, you know, these folks are pretty professional about that. They're not preening for us. Yes, Councilmember Carr.
Yeah, I actually agree with Councilmember Hefner, and I especially did like the fact that they were both before us, and actually it could be a part of it. There was a lot of items that they brought forward to us in our meeting last year of improvements that they wanted to make, and evaluating whether those improvements happened or not would be interesting. I did have one question, though. Are we also considering in this evaluation any comments received from Louisville residents or the public that have interacted with the judge and prosecutor?
The answer right now is yes.
Good.
There
Then it
is, they do surveys. They are, I mean, you all have seen them. There's generally fairly few of those, but they can sometimes be useful. You have to kind of consider a little bit, especially when they're very critical, that you may not know whether the person had a really bad result or whatever, but that's.
But beyond the surveys, we've gotten email comments from residents, and I wanted to know if those would be part of that evaluation process or not.
I think that's entirely up to us. We can decide to make that a part of it or not.
I think they should.
You like that idea? Go ahead, Councilmember Dickinson, and then Councilmember Fahey.
You can still make your comment after my motion. I move to appoint the mayor and mayor pro tem to conduct the annual evaluations of the Louisville municipal judge and the prosecuting attorney.
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
I would like to get all of the information that the court staff gets, all the comment cards, any other public comment that we get regarding what they've done well, what they've done poorly. And if we get all of that information before we have our conversation with the judge and the attorney, then I think we could make a more informed decision. I will say, going into I did these evaluations several times already, and sitting in the courtroom or sitting in the prosecutor's office beforehand, I could tell if they were being personable, if they were answering questions of the people that they were talking to. The judge has done a wonderful job of making sure that everyone feels comfortable in answering questions and things in the courtroom. But I don't have the expertise to know, should they have reduced the sentence? Should they? I don't know. I mean, I have my personal opinions on all these cases, but I would like to see the public comments, especially the people who were actually there before the judge and dealing with the prosecutor.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to be doing. That's what's part of it right now. All the cards, that is the surveys are part of it. I think I didn't see anybody disagreeing with Councilmember Kern around taking any public comment that's been made. And, you know, we weight these as we will, right? Some things will weigh more than others. I was going to make a couple of friendly amendments, or propose a couple of friendly amendments. One is to require that when we appoint two people to do this, that we require them to go to 2 sessions of the court, because I think we're going to be reappointing or not. I think there's something valuable in it, even if it's difficult to tell, whether somebody's doing well at it. I think the point that you make, Councilmember Fahey, is well taken, that these folks are representatives of us, and we sort of presume their competence, but they need to be good representatives. And I probably should have waited on that until I got a second, because I'm kind of advocating for it before. So who made the motion? Councilmember Dickinson? Are you okay with that one? And actually, that's the one that I know. No, there was one more, which is that I think the meeting that we have with the prosecutor and the municipal judge, we can decide how to use that if we want to, but I don't think we should be covering explicitly performance review in that, because they're not going to have that would make a difference to them. I think that would make a difference to anybody, and I'd rather keep it separate. We can talk about that. Are you amenable to that?
Yeah, I made a motion who the 2 people are. That's all I did.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
How the meetings go or when the meetings are, or anything, just the 2 people that will go to evaluate the attorney and the judge.
Any other?
I just would like to, unless somebody has already spoken with the Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to express concern that she is not here to weigh in on her being one of the people chosen to do this. And I wouldn't want to mandate that of her, that we all do, without her being here to weigh in.
Isn't that exactly what you do when somebody's
That is exactly
not
what I
here?
did. But
I don't know.
I'll rephrase my intent. I move to appoint the current mayor and the current mayor pro tem to conduct the annual evaluations of the judge and the municipal judge and the prosecuting attorney. Maybe we don't have to do this again.
It was clear. Oh, you mean permanently, that's who always does it? Not just this time, but now I understand what your motion is.
I would object to that. I would object to that. Anybody can go to them and have input, but we're appointing people who have to go. I appreciate the point that's being raised, but
I think it was not just this time. Caleb is suggesting that the mayor and mayor pro tem always are the 2 people who have to do the evaluation every single year. That's what he's motion.
All right.
Not just this time. It's not just Chris and Barbara. It's whoever has the mayor title and whoever has the mayor pro tem are the 2 that always do.
On behalf of this mayor and every other mayor who may come after me, I would object to that. I think that ought to be something every council member does round robin like we do right now and appointed, but we'll see how that goes.
You can also offer a substitute motion, but I would like to wrap up.
I'd like to wrap up too.
So either call a vote or make a substitute motion. I'd like to wrap up.
I'm going to make a substantive motion. All right. And the motion being that we do the evaluations by using all of the information that we have customarily used in the past, that we have the 2 people from council to be chosen by the council each year, conduct an evaluation, and to attend at least 2 sessions of court for both the municipal judge and the prosecutor. And there was one other thing that I had mentioned before.
We need to pick the 2 people for this year.
Well, we need to pick the 2 people for this year, but that's, and that those 2 people be the mayor and the mayor pro tem.
Second.
Any other further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed, nay.
Okay. All right. City Attorney's report,
None, thank you.
right? Upcoming agenda items and identification of future agenda items. Councilmember Kern.
I think, given the recent conversation from the last two council meetings from community members around the bocce courts, and I'll second the thanks from one of the residents with our staff doing such an amazing job so quickly responding. I'd like to make sure that we do add this at least to our conversation with the budget, is making sure that this is something that's at least discussed if there is a need for us to budget a line item for it.
Let me get a reminder. Do we have any proposal within the budget currently relating to bocce?
Mayor, I'm trying to rack my mind. I do not have all of our CIPs memorized, but there's nothing on my radar in the current time for bocce. I will let you know that capital improvements are something that we are actually looking at paring down right now. So I can ask the team to prepare a little bit more information about what that would look like so you can prioritize with that context.
How would that be?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Cooperman.
I was looking at the CIPs recently, and I didn't see anything around bocce. I was wondering, I mean, could that fall into just operational budget? Might be another question to consider.
Yeah, it could be operation or maintenance. Certainly some of the things I heard from commenters and in emails is quite above and beyond operation and maintenance. These would be a capital improvement to update or change our bocce courts in a material way. Up to what council is interested in talking about there.
Go ahead, Councilmember Kern.
And it's sort of around budget, sort of around finance too. It is the broader question of how, and because the city currently cannot accept like a donation or like to specifically work on something. We've brought this up, I think, in years prior and have asked if this is something that we can our finance department can look into this for us. I just wanted to see if that was still on the radar.
Yeah, Councilmember Kern, that is on the radar. That's something that came up in this budget conversation. We are currently working on scheduling out your council agenda, and that's certainly something we can talk about with the work plan, what timing that fits in.
Thank you.
So it sounds like we, at this point, don't have any additional items for the agenda, that there's other internal city staff, work to be done on some of the issues that we talked about. All right, anything further? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.